Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Apostate Deen, or Apostate Aladdin. I would like to welcome you to my first attempt at doing this on YouTube rather than TikTok. This kind of format where I ask people to join the live stream and tell me what do they believe and why do they believe in it. So the point of this kind of talk is not to mock them for their belief, no matter how silly it is, as long as it's inconsequential, or mock them for their rationale at how they arrived at that belief, if they employed rationality at all. The point is to get them to think about why they believe and explain it to us, because maybe, just maybe, I'll come across, a good reason to believe, or more like a convincing reason that would make me reconsider why did I stop believing in Islam, though I don't think belief is a choice. But regardless, I'm still looking forward to hearing from people, and that doesn't only include Muslims. Obviously, because of my channel, I'm expecting more Muslims to join than other religions, but I'm always interested in hearing from other religious people as well, because it does give everybody a chance to listen to how similar their reasoning is, and also learn something new. Like, I've learned about a little bit about Christianity from talking to Christians on this kind of live stream, and I've learned about Taoism the other day, which was very interesting. My idea of spirituality was very different till I had that chat. Anyway, let me share the StreamYard link for whoever wants to join. It'll be in the comments. Make sure to please try to use as least profanity as you could, just to be inclusive for anybody in the audience who wouldn't want to hear that. Try to keep it civil. I have a few basic rules in the description of this YouTube video. You would have to log in with your YouTube or Facebook accounts, I believe, just to verify who you are. Yeah, and till we wait for somebody to arrive, let me tell you about some of my upcoming projects. Maybe get some feedback about that. So, yeah, my upload schedule is a little all over the place because I don't know when I'm going to have the time. But some of what I'm working on includes the following. A follow-up to Ibrahim's story, part 1. I'm not nearly done with the story, so I'll be talking more about that. By the way, anyone who does join, please tell me in the private chat who you are, like your name, your religion, and yeah, just please, prepare me. So that's one video that's coming soon, hopefully. Another idea is stories of the prophets, and Prophet Muhammad alone has a lot of stories that I can cover. And the idea isn't just to inform you about every aspect of their life. That's not exactly the point. If you would like that, you can listen to a Muslim lecturer talk about all the details. I'm not going to omit anything, anything major, or at least anything major that is relevant to what I'm going to be talking about in these videos. But the point is to give a commentary from both an outsider's perspective and an insider's perspective, because I used to be a Muslim and I still had questions as a believer. So it might get confusing how I'm switching between both, but it's worth watching in my opinion. But obviously I made the video, so that's what I'd say. What else? There's a stupid video that I made. It's like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not sure if I want to upload it, but it's reenacting a very silly hadith. And I act very silly because the hadith is very silly. So that may or may not come depending on my mood. There's a video about morality. So this is a very deep topic that I've seen a lot of people attempt to talk about. And there are very good videos already about where does morality come from? What if you're an atheist? Does that mean you have no morality? And so on and so forth. But I find that some of these videos, although they're great, they don't exactly hit the target audience, because usually the people repeating, whatever they want about morality, they're saying this as kind of a talking point. They're not exactly saying this because they've read into philosophy and ethics and that's the conclusion they arrived at. They're just repeating it. So I want to address that from a different angle that would show you that even according to Islamic scholars, we do have morality that is not tied to being a Muslim. So that's an upcoming video. A very interesting video that I cannot wait to finish writing it might be a 2-part series, a video about miracles and how they prove religion or don't prove religion and so on. I'm always asked, can you debunk or can you talk about this miracle or that miracle, or what is your opinion about it? 1 second. I see people checking in and out of the private chat. Please stay, and I will add you to the stream in a minute. So please stay there, like peace. And there was a TR person. I don't know. Anyway, back to it. Yeah, so that video is going to be very interesting. I don't want to give away too much, so let me just leave it at that. I don't think it's anything you would expect. So yeah, I don't necessarily always comment on this miracle or that miracle in Islam because I find it's kind of a waste of time. And for every claim of miracle, there's a video about it being debunked. So, make of that what you will. And lastly, I don't know if this is going to be a dedicated video or not, but I will be talking about argumentation, like making a case for Islam in the Quran and in Hadith. So I already kind of touch on that in the story of Prophet Ibrahim, the video that I already uploaded. I review kind of or comment on what Islam considers to be, or what the Quran considers to be, some kind of proof for Islam. Like, for example, when Ibrahim says, how come your idols cannot fend for themselves? Like, I can break them, and he did break them and nothing happened. Is that really proof that Islam is the truth? Because you can go and do the same thing to, Islamic buildings or whatever, and God's not going to protect them. So anyway, the point is to talk about how poor this argumentation is. So that's also an upcoming video. So I have someone in the chat. Their name is Peace. I'm going to add them. I'm presuming they're Muslim. Please tell me something in the private comments about you. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead. So, oh, and they dipped again. I am a little worried that there's not going to be enough people joining. So here's the StreamYard link again. Someone says nice touching in the background. Oh, thank you. Okay, there's Peace. I'm adding them in 3, 2, 1. Hi, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Yourself?
Okay, so I'm very nervous. This is the first time I'm doing something like this.
No need to be nervous. It's okay.
Okay, so I'm a Hindu.
Okay.
And yes, like I'll talk about both religion and God because I think people take it as one thing, but I feel it's like I believe in God, but not so much in religion as of now. So yeah, I believe in God. I said that. That's because I have a very simple reason because of the questions that we crave as humans in general. Like we have a craving, a desire to answer everything that we come across. So when I question in my head, I can never reach to every answer. Like in in general, like for example, when I talk about the existence of us, the universe, when I question about it, theories explain a lot, but again, I cannot ever reach to an absolute answer as to how we came into existence. So that is because that is the plain reason that I believe in the existence of a supreme power that we can call God. There's no other reason for it. And when it comes to religion, I have
Can I
not
ask you a
completely.
follow-up about that before you talk about religion?
Sorry, what?
Can I ask you a question about that before you tell me about religion?
Please. I'm sorry, I'm just a
No,
little bit
that's
shivery.
okay. That's okay. There's no
Yeah.
need to be nervous. And I'm sorry, by the way, if I interrupt anybody. I'm just, trying to get some thoughts out there.
Yes, yes.
So, for example, I wanted to ask. So you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of questions that are unanswerable out there, and that is pretty much the only reason why you believe in a higher being is because that would be the answer, or it seems like these questions will be kind of covered by that, that being. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I feel like I mean people can be creative at this point. If we come to answering questions, people can think a lot. But I come to believe that there is some supreme power, not necessarily something that I can imagine as like I can associate with a shape or a size. Not like nothing like Jesus or nothing like any other god. I'm just saying some supreme power that is above all, because I cannot understand how we came into existence. I cannot get the answer as to how the first atom ever was formed. So that is why, that's the only reason I believe that something supreme is there, and I choose to call it God.
Okay. I gotta say, I kind of have a similar stance up until the point of believing in God. Like, for example, I've always said there's questions that we'll never know the answer to, like how did, as you put it, how did the first atom come to be, or was matter
Yeah,
always there? And if matter
yeah,
was always there, is matter God? You know, it's
yeah.
there's a lot of questions about that. And in my mind, I kind of don't care if there's a creator or not. It is a very interesting question to ponder, and it's, a lot of people find benefit in having these discussions. But at the end of the day, as long as it's not a specific description of God, right, that says you need to do this, you need to do this to please me, and so on,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the origin of life. It matters what we do going forward. But I'm interested in learning that, some people find it more comforting. Is that why you find it more comforting to put an answer to that, like the higher being answer? Is it more comforting than not knowing?
Yes, I think, yeah, because I think as humans we have the tendency to have something as compared to nothing.
Okay.
Something is always better than nothing.
Okay. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
a placeholder for, a more accurate answer, right?
Yes, I mean, like, who knows? I mean, science will maybe come up with something in the future, but right now, I don't think anybody can answer. There are, I mean, obviously, we have advanced, we have evolved a lot, but we cannot really put an answer to the question that how were we created? Not just us.
Mhm.
Like, if somebody talks about Big Bang, if someone talks about any other process that took place any amount of years ago, I would still have the same question: how did that happen? Because from what we have learned, you know, um, like for something to be created, we need something. Like for a reaction to be done, we need a reactant, and that will transform
Mhm.
itself to the product. So no
Well,
matter what
what would
product you
happen
take me to.
if we find more answers? Like if we somehow figure out what was before the Big Bang, for example, would you like at what point would the answers be satisfactory enough that the belief in God is not necessary anymore?
I don't think so. It's gonna happen any. I mean, maybe we will evolve into some other species because our brain right now, I don't think is capable of understanding. Like that's what I'm saying. Even if someone tells us what was beyond, what was before Big Bang, even then
Mhm.
there will be some form of matter involved. There will be some form of space involved. How did that come into existence? I don't
Okay.
think we can answer that right now.
Okay. And I want to get your thoughts briefly on religion. So you said, but you don't believe in religion. You believe in possibly a higher power, but not religion. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Now, like my belief is not very direct, I would say. I don't completely deny religion. And also, you mentioned in between that when I say God, like you said something about pleasing God or something. I don't agree with that at all. Now, like what normally religions tell us, we have to please that higher power, that supreme power, whatever. I don't think that. I mean, that sounds just lame to me. I don't think we as humans can really do anything to please whatever created us. So my
Okay.
idea of that supreme power is not what religion tells us. But as you asked, my thoughts about religion. So, like I am from a family. My family is like very unorthodox, very simple. We don't really focus a lot on religious matters and all. Like always in my family, critical thinking was appreciated, and also as Hindus in general, we don't learn about our religion from an early age, unlike other religions. So I was never into it, and up to a like maybe 2 3 years back, I believed that all religions are almost the same. Like they teach the same thing in very slightly different ways. But now that I've um, learned about a lot of religions, I think that is not true. There are religions that are more harmful, religions that are less harmful. So that is something um, that is something that forces me to think about this religion thing before making any statement about believing or not believing in it. For example, I do not agree with Islam. Like, I have researched enough about it to not agree with it. I
You don't
don't agree
agree
with
with it, meaning that you don't think it's from God, or you don't agree with what it preaches?
I don't agree with almost anything. I mean, obviously it has peaceful verses, like Quran has peaceful stuff, but in all, I think it's totally irrelevant. Like, it's the main problem that I have with these with Islam, Christianity, is that, I think the scripture is more of a rule book. It tells us what we are supposed to do, and not also on a very what do you say, on a very um I'm not getting the word. Like, we're told what we're supposed to do on a very daily basis kind of stuff, like
Mhm.
pray these many times a day, or
Wait,
stuff like that, which is,
I do want to
yeah.
ask a pointed question though, because I do want to listen to more, but I want to get to the next caller as well, because I know some people are waiting. But I wanted to ask, somebody asked in the comments, what does Hindu mean to you exactly? Can you tell us more about that? Because you said you're a Hindu, but you're not religious Hindu.
Well, Hinduism is actually a very foreign term. The main religion was Sanatan Dharam. This was given to us because of the river Indus, and that is a name given to us by the foreigners. It's not really something that associates with the religion. The main name is Sanatan Dharam, and now I am a born Hindu, and I'm not very sure about completely not agreeing with Hinduism, because Hinduism has a lot of things that I think it separates it from, in general, a lot of religions. I'm not trying to advocate it in any way, but I just feel like Hinduism talks about atheisty. One can be an atheist and one can also be a Hindu. Basically, we can believe in God and be a Hindu, and we can not believe in God and be a Hindu. Hinduism, it's like more a way of living life. It revolves around, from what I know, it's very vast. I really can't, like, I don't think I know even 0.1% of it. But from what I have studied about it, it talks about basically two beliefs. One is dharma and one is karma. Dharma is what we are supposed to do, as in, like, if I'm a student, I'm supposed to study. If I'm a teacher, I'm supposed to teach. If I'm a warrior, I'm supposed to fight. That's what dharma decides, and it's by choice. It's not by your birth or anything. And karma is what you might have heard of. It's basically, if I'm doing right to other people, right will come back to me, good will come back to me. So these are the basic principles that you will agree with if you call yourself a Hindu. And it does not, if you becoming in Hindu or being in Hindu does not mean that you are agreeing with God, or you have to believe in some power, which is what still keeps me like uh, a, be in the religion, because that is what like concepts like karma and dharma, I really agree with them. Anyways, I mean, even if I wasn't a Hindu, I would have agreed with them.
That makes sense. I mean, I kind of agree with the concept of. I mean, I wouldn't say I agree with the concept of karma. I think it would be nice if that is true. If there's some kind of mechanism out there that keeps a little bit of a balance.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for coming here and telling us about your beliefs. I know a lot of people weren't aware that Hindus can be atheists as well, so that was good to clarify for people.
Yeah, I mean, not just atheist. Hindus can be like polygamy, monogamy, polytheisty, anything. Like, it's diversity. It's not like a rule book that you have to just follow. That is what
Okay.
I think it's very special about it. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much for having me.
Oh, for sure. Thanks. Thanks for coming here. Have a good
Okay.
one.
Okay, same to you. Bye.
Bye bye. All right. I'm gonna take the next caller. Well, I don't think they told me much about them, but I am curious. Deen and Haqq. I know they're probably they are Muslim. So please, I'm adding you in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, this is Deen here
Yeah, how's it
from
going?
India. Oh, it's fine. And how are you doing?
Not too bad. Thanks for asking.
All right.
So
Now,
tell me, why do you believe that Islam is the truth?
well, I'm a very Indian type of a believer. So rather than believing
What does
on the
that mean?
traditional stuff,
Okay.
I mean it's an amalgamation of various beliefs. So I'll just stick to the beliefs rather than sticking to the traditional Islam.
Okay.
My problem is that when I look at some of the phenomena, then I'm really I'm unable to explain some of the spiritual, what I consider as spiritual experiences, and I'm unable to explain how can consciousness exist apart from the material world. So
So yeah, so you don't
I was,
understand consciousness, or yeah, I don't think anyone can explain consciousness or spiritual things or events that happen to you, correct so far?
and and that is the basis of Islam or any other, the so-called spiritual uh, religions of the world, whether it is Christianity or Islam or it's any other religion of Hindus. It's
That's
a
a sweeping statement, but okay, that's what you believe, that this is the basis or the need for religion or the foundation of it.
not exactly need for religion, but it is the unexplainable of the human existence. I link it with the very existence itself, because human beings exist, and human language makes an assumption regarding the existence of a conscious entity called I, the individual, the ego, and
Okay.
it tries to explain the phenomena of the worldly experiences with respect to that I. And
Okay.
in order to arrive at that I, the human language itself has to posit and assume an entity which is consciousness.
So God is consciousness? Is that what you
I'm not
believe?
coming to God right now because I'm still at the Cartesian moment, the
Still the
cogito.
what moment? Sorry?
The Cartesian moment, the
Cartesian?
Cartesian moment, the cogito, the cogi of the Descartes. You must
Okay.
have heard about Descartes.
The card, yeah.
Descartes, Descartes was one of the great philosophers of this Renaissance moment,
So are you at
and
the point that I can trust my mental faculties and I exist,
correct,
therefore I am? I
exactly,
think,
exactly,
therefore I am? Yeah. Okay.
exactly. So I'm going to start with that. I'm not going to get into the details of, I'm going to just think that I do not know about Islam. I do not know about Hinduism or Christianity or anything. I just have to explain the phenomena which I see. And this is a very materialistic way of, or rather scientific way of looking at things. I need to explain the experiences, the appearances which are around me. And I need to come at the cogito movement, of the Cartesian movement. What is a Cartesian movement, cogito, where I can say that, yes, I exist and my consciousness exists.
Okay.
So I've been trying to look at the entire, uh, uh, all the all the religions as an expression or as an attempt to explain this cogito movement. And that's where the spiritual experience is the type of what the modern science tends to call as hallucinations, or or
So you
the
think that
hallucinations
divine
or
revelation
epilepsy.
is hallucination, or
Exactly. No, yes. The modern science tends to consider these divine revelations as hallucinations.
okay?
But I'm
What do you
trying to
think?
still, yes, I'm trying to understand what exactly those moments are. Then suddenly something in the brain suddenly short circuits, and you start to listen at some of the voices inside your head, and you assume that there is a conscious being which you are, and there are other conscious beings apart from your being, and how you can and how your eye interacts with those conscious beings which you can't see but which are there in your brain.
What are the conscious beings in my brain?
There are entities which you interact with in whether like these are like the entities which you conjure up suddenly in your dreams.
Oh,
In your
you
dream,
mean
you can
in my thoughts and dreams? Like
correct
conversations that I have in
exactly,
my head? You think these entities are
absolutely.
conscious?
No, I'm not saying these are conscious,
Okay.
but you try to explain their existence. You have suddenly an experience. You are suddenly, let's say, in one of the evenings, you get a lucid dream, or you have a hallucination, the so-called hallucinations, and you see something right in front of you, approaching you and saying something to you. You are unable to explain yourself because to a normal, ordinary person, those entities do not exist. The others cannot see it. These things are there, which to you are so vivid, as if they exist right in front of you. And this does not happen with one person, but this is a problem with the human existence itself, with the Homo sapiens brain itself.
So you believe that's the root of divine revelation and religions? Is
I'm
that
not saying the root. I'm not
okay?
saying the root. I'm saying I'm trying to explain. So that's why I say I'm trying to come at the cogito moment, the Cartesian moment, where I say, yes, I exist, and there is something called a consciousness which exists, which is apart from the material world.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
So, I'm trying to save the appearances which are around me, and I look at the sciences which try to explain these things, and I come to some of the things such as I'm sorry to say, if you allow me to connect this to the sciences, especially the quantum mechanics, because
Okay.
in quantum mechanics you posit a conscious observer which exists independently of the material world, which is dual in nature, which is particle or a wave nature, the
Yeah.
dualism of the quantum mechanics. So the
So
problem is,
I'm
so I'm
trying to
trying to,
understand, just because I know a lot of people in the audience are not going to be keeping up here. So you're saying that that this has to do this dual nature of, for example, photons, has to do with consciousness in a way, or
yes, I'm
okay.
trying to, I'm trying to come to the cogito moment. You understand? When
No, I'm trying to understand
absolutely,
where you're going from that moment. So, for example, your name is Deen al Haqq. So, do you
yeah,
believe in
I'll
Islam?
connect it later.
Sure.
I'll collect it later. I'll collect all that, connect all those things
Yeah,
later.
but I just want to make
Because
it a little more concise just because other people are waiting to join as well. So,
yes, yes. So what I'm trying to say is that the existence of a conscious being is a necessary postulate for the existence of quantum mechanics itself, first of all.
because they're the
If it
observer?
absolutely, and there is the observer effect. So if there is no observer, your material world is absolutely different. So the quantum physics has to posit the existence of a consciousness. The consciousness is a category, it's a material category in understanding the human world. And that is where I'm trying to come at the cogito moment. The cogito moment of this world is that, I mean, it's a basic belief that consciousness exists, which a lot of materialistic people, the normal, layman, sort of a commonsensical materialism, tries to deny. And that is where I'm coming to. That there is a cogito moment, there is a consciousness which can which can be explained, and which is the reason why the entire duality between the spiritual world and the material world can be explained. And
Can
that
be
is the basic belief,
explained. What do you mean can be explained?
the
By
existence of
religion?
not exactly religion. For example, I'll come to one thing. I don't know whether you believe whether the world is just or not, but the justness of the world cannot be explained by the materialistics, by the people who just deny the existence of a after after life experience,
Well,
which is
who
at the end of the
that
body.
is if you believe that there is justness in the world, but what if you don't believe? I don't have a reason to believe that the world is just inherently, that it will balance itself out in the afterlife or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is what I'm saying. If you believe that just justice is just a imaginary concept,
Yeah.
and
Do I have a problem if I believe that? I mean, intellectually, like what? Sorry, I'm wording this wrong. I mean, is
I
there a
know I
conundrum
understand.
here?
There's no conundrum here, but we tend to believe that. I mean, a human being. I mean, that's I'm again coming back to the very understanding of what a human nature is, which of course is a concept which is very different for various people. Like for example, the materialistic believe in a Dawkian, in a, sort of a genetic sort of a human nature, a gene
Wait, sorry,
which
I'm a
expresses
little
itself
lost.
in a
So
very
you were
different way
talking
for
about,
it.
yeah, you were talking about justice, and you're
I'm talking
saying
about a
if you believe in like justice in this world or fairness, then you need to believe in an afterlife, right?
no. I'm not saying that.
Or an
I'm saying that
unseen.
that
Okay.
let's see. I mean, there is an appearance before you. I'm talking about just experiences, common sense appearance. You find that the child is born with deformities, all right, and you suddenly look at the deformed child and you say, okay, what is it that he has done, or why is it that he is born
Sorry,
like
I'm
that?
getting a little lost here. I'm trying to connect the dots. So can you just make it a little more concise? What do you believe at the end of the day? Like what is the summary of what you believe?
Well, at the end of the day, first thing is that the cogito moment, that there is consciousness which exists,
Okay.
which is independent of the material world, which is what can be explained by which has to be understood, which has to be accepted. If you even accept the quantum physics and the materialistic theories of the
Okay.
present world,
How do you link that
first,
to Islam then? Or Deen al-Haqq as you
I'm
put
not
it?
coming.
Okay.
Yes, I'll come to Deen later on, because I'm trying to first come to the very
Yeah,
basic
I'm gonna
principles,
have to move
because
to the next caller soon, so there's not gonna be a
because
lot of room.
I don't want to get into the details of the actual implementation of that
Okay,
in the
well,
real world.
the point of
Yeah,
the talk is to try to understand what you believe when it comes to religion, for
exactly.
example, right? So I want to get to that because I need to move to the next
Yes.
caller within the
Okay.
next
No.
minute.
Yeah. So finally,
Mhm.
I want to link it to the experience of our Rasulullah in the cave of Hira, because he also had certain experiences, and he used to have certain experiences, which is a conscious experience, and which people tend to in the modern world believe that it's got nothing to do with the conscious entities which are there in his head, but rather it's some sort of a product of his own materialistic brain, or maybe some sort of an epilepsy or something like that. That's what a lot of
Okay.
people believe.
And you
So
believe it's divine, or it's some
exactly,
kind
so
of touch with the unseen consciousness.
exactly. So that's what
Okay.
I'm coming to.
Okay. That makes sense that yeah, makes sense that you believe that. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye. Yeah, so I still had some follow-up thoughts on that, but I wanted to take the next caller. So I'm gonna move to you, Harb. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? You're muted. Oh, there we go.
Oh, hi. How are
Hi.
you?
Not too bad. Thanks. Yourself?
I just want to say thank you for opening up this dialogue. I really
For
much
sure. Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not gonna take too long, because I gotta go pray. So
Okay.
okay, so basically, I'm a Sunni Muslim. I just simply just believe in the Quran and Sunnah. That's it. So, and I just try my best to follow everything from it.
Well, I
Basically,
gotta take a step back.
yeah.
Why do you believe in the Quran and Sunnah to be the ultimate truth?
So basically, it all started like 8th grade. I started practicing in 8th grade. So
Well,
I
how old
started
are you, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
16.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't really started practicing Islam until 8th grade. That was like when I started to dive deeply into Islam. Like, you know, and also that was like when I started spending more time reading the Quran more. And also I'm a Hafiz, so you know,
Okay.
I'm studying the Quran. So, and and ever since I studied and memorized the Quran, I have never gotten so much insight. I have never gotten so deep into the Quran itself. Everything in it is, it's like very crystal clear to me. And I know you wouldn't agree to that, and I totally respect that. But from my point of view, from my heart, I believe this is the truth, just simply by reading it and reading some of the hadiths as well. I mean,
Okay.
that's
I
something
have some.
subjective. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's kind of subjective to you, but I know, but this is like, you know, what I believe, and this is like why I believe, simply because I read it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do have follow-up questions on that. I don't want to keep you for too long, but
Yeah.
so tell me if you got to go at any point. Um, so you said you became more devout in 8th grade and you started memorizing the Quran, and you said a lot of it is crystal clear to you. And I can think of examples of things that aren't crystal clear, but I don't want to like quiz you or turn this into anything like that. What I'm curious about is you say you believe because of its clarity to you at this point or because you've read it. But do you think you would have found the Quran and read it and saw it the same way had you been born in a different kind of family, like a Christian or non-Muslim family?
I didn't understand the question. Sorry.
Sure. Let's presume you were born in a very different family, not Muslims at all. Do you
Oh,
think
okay.
you would have, if you come across the Quran, like put aside the news and the reputation of Islam, if you went to a masjid with a friend and you were introduced to Islam, do you think that reading the Quran, especially if you're not an Arabic speaker, I'm presuming you speak Arabic, or
Oh no, I'm not an Arabic speaker. I mean,
are you
I'm
from
learning
a
Arabic.
Somali background? I'm guessing.
I'm no, I'm Ajami. I'm
Okay.
not Arab. Yeah.
Ajami, okay. So okay, same thing then. You're not Arab but born in a different family. Do you think you would have found the Quran, and if you read it, do you think you would have arrived at the point of belief that you're in now?
I would say yes, because even if I was a non-Muslim, at the end of the day, guidance comes from God, from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It's only Allah that could guide, and Allah could misguide. You know, you know.
How do you understand misguidance, by the way? How does Allah misguide, and why would Allah misguide?
Um, so like sometimes there are like people, they choose to disbelieve in Islam simply because of their reasoning, simply because of their desires, and you know how their view of the world, and that's just between them and Allah. And you know, sometimes you just have to understand that that at the end, it's only guidance is in the hands of Allah. Like I can't guide you, right? I can't tell you. I can't like force guidance upon you or anyone else, nor can you misguide me, because our job is to simply convey the message of Islam, and guidance only comes from Allah. "مَن
Well,
يَهْدِهِ اللَّهُ فَلَا
yeah,
مُضِلَّ لَهُ وَمَن يُضْلِلْ فَلَا هَادِيَ لَهُ." I'm pretty sure you know what that means.
yeah. So I want to understand here. So your idea of God misguiding us, it is because the person chose to disbelieve in Islam, as you put it. So then Allah misguides them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what is Allah's role in this process if the person has already, as you put it, chosen to disbelieve?
Look, look.
I don't mean to quiz you or
Yeah.
anything. I'm trying to understand how you see it from your point of view.
We like, the thing is, this is in Allah's hands. Allah could guide whomsoever He wants to guide. Like, I mean, I can't really give you like a deep proper insight. Like,
Okay.
I need to understand. I think I need to understand this a bit more.
Okay.
To be honest, but I just know that there are people, they choose to be misguided. I mean, they choose to not believe in Islam to be the truth, right? And this is by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah, has all, the qadr of Allah, I know that you have some problems, that I watch some videos, and I know it makes sense to me. I know it doesn't make sense to you, and I get why, because I know it didn't really make sense to me at first, but once I kept understanding it, I talked to my teachers, and I understand it a little bit more better than I did now. But
Well,
it's
that's
still
why I'm
not
asking you
understand.
questions, right?
Yeah.
Because I've arrived at the conclusion that it doesn't make sense. And that's why I wanted to understand your point of view of it. Like how
Yeah.
you said that Allah misguides, even though the person, I disagree that the person chooses to disbelieve, and I'll talk about that topic
I mean,
later. And
don't you like have choices? Don't you feel like you have to make choices, right? Do you feel
so
forced?
belief and disbelief are not choices. Like,
Okay.
I'll give you an example. To you, it seems obvious because you are already a Muslim. So you'd say, obviously, Islam is the Haqq. So why wouldn't you follow it, the truth? Why wouldn't you follow it? You choose to because of your desires and so on. But I'll give you a simple example. Like if I showed you a blue pen, right? Like this, and I said, this pen is actually black. It's not blue. You might agree with me if you're forced to, but you will never actually believe that this pen is black, right?
So did you choose to disbelieve in Islam, or do you feel
No,
forced?
it's not a choice. I feel like, yeah, in a way, I was kind of forced through thinking. So that's a
I
good
mean,
one.
that's kind of a choice, because like
Well, back to my example, do you choose, like, if I'm telling you this is black, are you choosing to disbelieve that it's black, or you're just following what you understand and see and conclude?
No, I don't believe it. The pen is blue just because you told me. I believe the pen is blue because the pen is blue.
No, if I'm saying it's
Yeah.
black, are you
Oh, yeah.
disbelieving in my claim because you're choosing to disbelieve, or because it's the
Oh, yeah,
logical?
yeah. Of course, it's yeah. I would
So you're
disbelieve.
making a choice when you're like disagreeing that it's black.
Yeah,
So can you make a choice to believe that it's black?
I would, but I wouldn't because it's illogical.
See,
It's
that's the
blue.
thing. Are you really choosing, or are you led to believe things because of how your brain arrived at logic?
You can say that's black, and
Right, but would you believe it?
you're entitled to it. But
No, I'm saying you
yeah.
personally. If it's a choice, can you choose the opposite side temporarily, full-heartedly?
Well, no, because unless if it's proven otherwise, then you have to believe in the other.
See, that's
That
the point of view that where I'm coming from is, because it wasn't proven, then I'm going to stick with my conclusion, which seems more obvious to me, right? But anyway, the point, yeah, like someone put it in the comments, can you choose to believe that logically this is black? Can you make that choice?
you can, but
Can you?
I can, but I choose not to. I can
No,
say it's black.
no, not say it. Can you truly
Oh,
believe it? Like you go to sleep and you
truly
believe,
believe it.
like you truly believe this is black. You didn't just say it because of me, right?
Oh, okay. I understand. Yeah, you
Do
can
you think
truly
so?
believe it. Yeah,
You can, like, you can really look at this and honestly within yourself be like, this is black.
I would, but I wouldn't because it's blue.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
See,
maybe
that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Like, you can't force yourself to believe that it's black. You say, I would, but I wouldn't. But you know that you could never in a million years force yourself to believe this is black, right?
Okay, so what's
So
okay?
the way I'd link it is, to me, the pen being blue is Islam is not from God, right? That's That's what it looks like to me. So I'm not telling you to agree with me or disagree with me. I'm saying at least hopefully you have the understanding that I didn't choose to see the pen as blue. It is literally how my eyes interpret the color and how my brain understood it, right? Just like I can't choose to make myself believe it's black. So when you say that Allah misguides people who choose this belief, it seems like he has no role because they already chose it, right?
No, Allah has already like decreed that it's going to happen.
He
Allah already knows.
predetermined that I'm going to disbelieve.
Yeah,
So
He
what
knows.
role am I playing then?
You're already playing in that role.
That he wrote for me to act out.
Yeah.
So doesn't that make me faultless in that conclusion then?
No. Well, in fact, nobody is faultless. We all make mistakes, except
Oh no, I'm talking about that
Yeah.
conclusion specifically.
no, because you made that choice.
That God predetermined in qada and qadar, right?
Yes, exactly.
So how can you have both? And I'm not trying to grill you on this because I want to corner you into anything. I want to understand how you make sense of two opposing things. Like say, for example, if I wrote a play, right? I don't know, or Shakespeare wrote a play and I made people act out the play. Can I then punish them for acting out the play if they have no choice but to act out the play?
What do you mean?
Like, can they do anything if they stick to the script? And, we are all sticking to Allah's script, the qada and qadar, whatever was written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, right? If they're forced to stick to the script for some reason, is there anything they could do to change the conclusion of the play?
Oh no, we're not being forced. We're not being forced.
So
Allah
is there
knows.
anything I could do that would surprise Allah?
Look, brother.
Yeah.
Allah already knows that we're gonna have this conversation. Allah knows what's going to happen tomorrow. What's going to
Knows
happen
or
the day after
decreed it?
tomorrow.
You
Yeah,
said
Allah knows
which one?
everything.
Knowing is not like decreeing.
Are you saying
Decreeing-
like? Are you saying? What are you saying?
No, I'm
like-
trying to understand because earlier you said decree. So decree means kind of decide or wrote it to be that way, right?
Yeah,
Am I understanding it correctly?
yeah.
So that is different than knowing, like being an observer and knowing before it even happened. Those are two different concepts. So do you think both of them are true?
Which one?
So God decided, decreed that it will happen, but also he knows it'll happen because I will choose it in the future. But if he decided it, then I'm not choosing anything because he decreed it.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean, those two things are kind of opposing in my mind. If God decreed something,
It doesn't
then
seem
I'm not
opposing
making a
in my
choice.
mind. It doesn't.
They're not?
It's not no contradiction at all in my mind. In my mind,
Okay.
Maybe.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for explaining that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish the best for you, and I wish Allah guides you and me as well, and everyone else who's watching this video. I really wish most Muslims wouldn't want you to go to hell. Just like I wouldn't want you to go to hell. I don't want you to die. In a state of suffering. I really wish for the best of you, and that
Well,
Allah
I
guides you to
appreciate
Jannah.
that sentiment.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something actually now that you mentioned this. That is a huge part of why I eventually disbelieved in Islam. One of my first questions ever was this conversation that we're having. I was asking, I think I was around your age, maybe slightly younger, slightly older, I don't remember. But I was asking, how can qada and qadar be true, and at the same time, people who don't believe in Islam, I'm not talking about people who make decisions to, kill or do something awful to other humans, people whose crime is simply disbelief, right? As you put it, choosing to disbelieve. If qada and qadar is true, God determined everything, is it their fault, especially if they're born into a situation where they're unlikely to embrace Islam, even if they come across the Islam presented in the right way? And my concern for them, I don't want them to go to hell. Just like what you described, that's exactly how I felt. But I couldn't make sense of, qada and qadar and free choices, free will. So
Wait, so do you believe in free will?
I because I don't believe, or I have no reason to believe there's a divine entity that wrote down everything that will happen, that decided it in advance. So I need to believe that we are in charge and we get to make choices. But I also believe that it is very deterministic. So I don't have a final conclusion yet, but I believe there's a lot of things that influence your choices, maybe to a point where they limit your choices or they kind of push you in a certain direction where it would be almost impossible to decide otherwise. Like I'm trying to think of an example. Say say you had a dream, right? Dreams are not in your control. That's not free will. You don't choose what dream or conscious, subconscious thoughts you have. You had a dream where you were eating a seafood meal and you wake up and you're like, I would love a piece of salmon right now. Did you choose to crave salmon that day? No. You could choose to act on it and get salmon or not get salmon. But even then, like maybe you live in an area where fish is not available, or you're not rich enough to buy fish every day. So then you don't really have the free will. It's not like you woke up and uninfluenced, you decided, I want to have fish, and then you have the choice of getting it or not, you know?
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So let's say like a person who wants to murder someone, you know, like or wants to torture someone, right? And
Wait, I gotta stop you here. Why are
yeah,
the examples always like a very obviously bad thing? I mean,
oh,
there's reasons we could talk about why that is bad, but
okay,
in my
okay.
mind, there's belief and disbelief,
Sorry. Okay,
right?
let's say someone wanted to, you know,
You're gonna think of something morally wrong, right? But
yeah,
so at the end of it, is disbelief morally wrong?
yeah, I believe it's morally wrong, but not that I want you to suffer the consequences.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that someone saying, I don't believe in Islam is committing a moral crime, knowing that it is a moral crime too, you know? Just because you claim my God doesn't like it when you disbelieve doesn't change, someone's beliefs. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah. So if
yeah,
you see disbelief as immoral, then I can see why your examples would all be about an actual immoral act like killing or harming someone or stealing and so on. So those, I think, people definitely have the choice not to do them, and they might be influenced to do them. They should still be held accountable and helped to not do that kind of thing if possible, rehabilitated.
Oh yeah. So are
Mm,
you saying that people? So are you saying like okay? So you're saying that you didn't make the choice of disbelieving in Islam, right?
Yeah.
So are you saying that you shouldn't be held accountable
So I don't believe that.
because Allah
Mhm.
knows? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, so within the framework of believing in Islam, I don't believe that's going to happen. But if I did believe
Yeah, I
in
know.
Allah, right? Um, I couldn't understand how God would hold people accountable for something like I have spoken to disbelievers. None of them are saying like that idea of a kafir, someone who conceals the truth or someone who disbelieves. This idea of a kafir in the Quran and Hadith, I have never seen it in real life. A person who knows Islam is the truth and rejects it, that kind of kafir. So it didn't
Yeah.
make sense in my mind. So if Allah decreed that they're going to be a kafir, I don't see why Allah would hold them accountable for His plan. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
So you don't believe that you should be held accountable. Is that
For
what you're saying?
something that Allah decreed, especially
No,
thought crimes, no.
no. For your disbelief.
Yeah, my disbelief is something God decreed, right?
Yeah, but it's also your choice that God decreed.
I don't understand the concept of a choice that I am forced to do
No,
by a
no.
book that's already
So
written.
okay, okay? Every time you make a choice, right? Do you feel forced? Like, oh, I choose between apple and an orange.
I think
Do
this
you
boils
feel?
down to belief being a choice. We've already like agreed to disagree on that.
I know. Do you
Because
feel
like I said,
forced? Do you feel forced for every choice that you make? Is that what you're saying?
no, I'm saying my thinking, my rationality, my inability to make sense of the things that in Islam you're supposed to not think about, that it forced me to disbelieve,
Okay,
right?
so that's just you making the choice. That's literally just you making the
Yeah,
choice.
we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. It's like, for example, if it's cold outside and you go outside and you feel cold, you're
You're literally
choosing to
making a
feel cold.
choice. Yeah.
Sorry?
You're literally making a choice.
Are you choosing to feel cold? Like if you're already
No,
outside, are
no,
you?
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Like you're choosing to disbelieve. That's and because that's based on your thoughts and your rational thinking, right?
But
So
that is not a choice. Like if I told you is 2 greater than 3, are you choosing to say yes? Sorry, are you choosing to say no, or is it just logical that you're saying no? Is 2 greater
no,
than 3?
no,
So are you choosing to say no, or is that just the obvious choice to you?
it's the obvious choice. It's common sense. That's why.
So are you choosing knowingly? You're choosing not to say 3 is smaller than 2 or whatever. You're not choosing the opposite because what you chose makes sense, right?
Because it's illogical. It's
Yes. So if I see Islam as illogical, do you think that's because I want to disbelieve or because that's how my mind works?
yeah, you choose to disbelieve.
But you just said, back to the analogy of numbers, you used logic or arithmetic or whatever to judge that this number is bigger than that, and then you give your answer. You didn't make that
Yeah,
choice because you want to choose that. It's just how it is, right?
yeah.
So that's how it
But
is for
so,
belief as well.
are you saying that Islam is the two?
In that example, yeah, like the statement 2 is bigger than 3 is false.
Okay, so how can you say with utmost confidence that Islam is illogical?
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many things in Islam. Like, even the idea that we're just discussing right now, where we agree to disagree, that belief is a choice, or that God can decree something and then hold people accountable for it. That is illogical to me. I mean, it may make sense to you
I mean,
after you've heard some answers.
some
Yeah.
people think the Earth being round is illogical.
Right, but we can measure these kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and
So can we measure Allah? Can we prove Allah's existence? Not only
yeah,
God, but like Allah specifically.
yes, we can.
Is that the source of your belief? Proving Allah?
The source of my belief? No, no, no. That's I already hold up as the standard. Like it's already the standard that Allah exists.
So how do you
How do
expect someone to believe in God because of proof?
no? That's like the standards. Like God existing. That's an unfalsifiable fact.
No,
That
it's
God exists.
unfalsifiable and unprovable, which means you can't disprove it, you can't prove it.
I'm sorry. It's a clear fact. And you can choose
How?
to disagree with that.
Okay.
But it's actually illogical to disbelieve
Okay.
in God.
I think we're reaching a conclusion here because I'm still not able to understand. You're saying it's an obvious fact and there is absolute proof.
Yeah, there's
But
absolute
like
proof.
what? What
You
is absolute proof? Not just in the
I,
existence of a
I can tell you.
creator.
I can
Yeah,
tell you.
sure.
You simply, you know, you simply have to look around. Look inside yourselves. Like, what do you think made the complexity of your brain, of the cells, of
Wait,
the
so you're saying
universe?
I should rely on my thoughts to prove God?
No, you just you just simply observe.
But I did observe and I arrived at a different conclusion.
No,
So how do I get to where you are? How do I get absolute certainty with proof? Like, what is the proof?
What is the proof?
Yeah. How do I become certain? Like, what is the formula if I wanted to? I wanted to believe. I'm asking this because I was in your position, but then I didn't know how to continue that way. So, what guidebook would I give? Like, not guidebook because you might say the Quran, but uh, what is the strategy to start believing again? Like, what is the proof that will convince me?
You simply have to observe. Like, why are you here? Have you ever thought about why do you
Oh yeah,
exist?
I've thought about all that stuff, but at the end of it, let's conclude. Let's arrive at the conclusion. Oh, there must be a higher being. How do we go from there to? And it is Allah and it is Islam. What is the absolute proof for that?
The Quran, obviously, but if you want to look for other reasons besides the Quran, you simply observe around you. Like, there's something out there who could have created this.
You know, a
Like,
Christian would say the same thing, right? About that point.
yeah, of course, I know.
So how do you differentiate? Like how? So is it because the Quran is better than the other books out there, therefore Islam must be the truth?
Yeah, because the Quran is preserved and
Does
it
the
has no
preservation of a book mean that it is divine?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, there are, for example, there are ancient carvings on walls and other ancient texts that have been preserved for longer than the Quran.
Yeah,
Does that
but
mean that they're divine?
is it the words of God or is it the words of human?
Well, you're saying it's the word of God because it is preserved, but
Yeah.
it has to be preserved and the word of God to be divine.
No, not just that. You simply, like, Allah tells you to, look at the signs. Look, like, do you want to know, like, if Allah exists? Simply look at his signs. What are his signs? The stars, the moon, the planets,
You could use that
everything.
for Christianity as well, is what I'm saying. I mean, that is still untrue for Christianity, but a Christian
Yes,
would say the same thing.
it's just to believe that, God exists. God is the one who created the universe.
So where do you go from
We,
that to, and it is Allah?
I mean,
I'm not-
obviously, I can't just say, oh, I can't just say, oh, I can see God, or I could, show you God. Like, do you believe gravity exists?
Yeah, we can measure gravity and test it and like, yeah.
Yeah. So,
But you can't test an experiment with God and determine
Yeah.
whether God exists or not.
Yeah, but the reason that God exists is simply because of everything around you.
No,
And
not
because
God.
of the
Allah,
Yeah,
not
God.
just God. Yeah.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, to, like, he's the God of that you and that he created, that you're created from, and I was created from. We're his, we're his creation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
I'm
is
I'm
the
just
God that
hearing a lot of statements from Islam that say, like you're saying, Islam is the truth because Allah created you and created us. But you have to, or like, I want to leave it at this. You have to look at it from an outsider's point of view. So say you're talking to someone who doesn't necessarily, like, not necessarily an ex-Muslim, but someone who just doesn't believe in any religion
Yeah,
or
I'm
in
doing it
Islam.
right now. I'm talking to an ex-Muslim. I'm talking
Right,
to
but
an
you still
outsider.
approach it. You still approach it as if like you're saying Islam is the truth because Allah says this, this, and that being that I created you. That's not evidence that an outsider would even. That's not evidence at all, right?
No, that is evidence.
To someone who already believes in Islam. I think we're arriving at a standpoint here because sorry, we're stopping here because I don't think you see how it is from an outsider's point of view, because I've tried to bring it to, for example, if a Christian said all the same things to me, if they said, look around you, look inside you, who created you, and so on, both of you would arrive at a point where you're both saying there must be a higher being. And then where do we go from there? You're saying the Quran would prove Islam at that point because of its preservation. But the preservation doesn't mean
Not just
divinity.
because of its preservation, because of the linguistic miracles and other things, and the fact that Allah mentioned his signs and prophecies made in the Quran, like the Romans being defeating the Persians.
So it's prophecies and linguistic miracles is how you prove that Allah is real and not Yahweh or another religion.
No, Yahweh is
I mean, not Yahweh, just choose any other
it's
name
just
for God.
it's just a name, yeah, for God.
Yeah. So you're saying the Quranic miracles and linguistic miracles and prophecies is how you prove Allah specifically, Islam.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And of course, anyone could believe it and anyone could disbelieve it. And like I said, guidance does not come from me or anyone else. Guidance comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I wish Allah guides you and guides me as well.
Right.
And I wish
Thank
simply
you.
wish the rest of you. Now
Thank you
I gotta
for
go.
joining. Thanks for joining. And I'll talk to you later.
All right, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, now I'm going to add ExMask, and then Rachel, you're next. Hey, how's it going?
Hello, Apostate Aladdin. First time we're speaking, I guess, since we became TikTok friends, if I can say we're TikTok friends.
That is true. Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to speak to you finally.
Likewise. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd just jump on and say hello. I've not really got too much to add. To those listening, I'm a ex-Muslim like Apostate Aladdin, and I make TikTok videos. And that's pretty much it from me. I thought I'd just jump on and have a quick chat.
Well, I want to ask you a couple of questions before we move on to the next caller in line. What motivated you to start your TikTok account?
So I joined TikTok so in the UK, we've had 3 lockdowns, and I joined TikTok, I think it was in the first lockdown, and it was your video that I came across. It was being duetted by Abdullah Samir. I don't know if you remember which one it was. It was the one about pushing the fly into the liquid, immersing the fly, and then one wing contains the cure and one contains the disease.
The video that I made?
You made that, yeah. It was on your original account, and
that was one of my first ones, yeah.
Yeah, so and I saw the burgeoning community on TikTok, and I thought I'll add my 2 cents as well.
All right. And the other question I had in mind is, when did you disbelieve, and what made you choose that, as they say?
So speaking to other ex-Muslims, my journey is pretty similar to theirs. So I'd done Umrah when I was about 14. So I came back from Saudi Arabia, just pumped. I'm going to be a great Muslim, praying 5 times a day. But I think it was around 17, 18, so about 4 years after I'd come back from doing Umrah, that I started to have these feelings. Went to university, moved out of my parents' house, started meeting people from all around the world, Christians, Jews, atheists, and as you've alluded to a few times, your religion is generally dictated to by where you're born. It's an accident of birth or an accident of geography. And I thought to myself, well, how am I on the right path and they are not, or they claim to be, they believe they are on the right path and therefore I'm hellbound. So nothing added up to me. And there was this constant battle between myself and trying to find some sort of truth with Islam. And there was a lot of back and forth between my inner feelings that this isn't correct and me trying to reconcile with Islam. And I think it was when I was about 21, 22, I just completely gave up. So from about 18 to 22, there was this drift away from Islam, but constant internal angst and trying to reconcile myself with Islam.
I can relate to so much of what you just said, down to the Umrah, except in my case, it was not to brag, but I've done Umrah way too many times because I grew up in Saudi Arabia. But it was Hajj. That's the one that really stood out to me. And I remember, like, it was even subconscious. It was even in my dreams that I was very worried that my Hajj wasn't going to be accepted, because there weren't doubts, but I had questions, and the questions, like, I was told, like, the topic is just, we can never understand it. At first, I was given answers, and we're always told it's okay to question and so on. But once you start saying this still doesn't make sense, it arrives at a point where you start, they make you feel, and I mean, like, even the nicest sheikhs, they make you feel by design in Islam like something's wrong with you, right? Like the shaitan is whispering. These are the whispers of the devil. That's why you're asking a rational question, because the devil's whispering it in your ear. But yeah, that inner turmoil for years, and that feeling, that excitement that you mentioned, I almost teared up when you mentioned, like, I want to be a good Muslim. I remember that drive.
I mean, there was me going to the mosque, me making extra efforts during Ramadan, that this is the year I'm going to just rectify everything and I'm going to be at peace with myself and with Islam. And unfortunately, it didn't quite work out like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's unfortunate though. I mean, I'd rather not. I don't know. Do you think you would have been happier if you were able to reconcile all this stuff and go back to believing, or you think you're happier now?
I'm much happier now. I think once you accept your fate, that in my case, I don't believe there's anything after we die, and once you accept that, you do find some peace. I think it was the British Humanist Association ran a campaign during Christmas in the UK. It said, "Stop worrying about God and just enjoy your life," and they had it plastered all over the London buses. And there's some element of truth in that. Once you stop worrying about where you're ending up after you die, and whether you should eat fish on a Friday, or eat pork, or don't drink, or get up at a certain time to pray. Once you negate all of those, remove all of those from your life, you do find some sort of peace. Certainly in my case.
I don't know if I fully agree. I want to give my answer to that before I move on. And I'm saying, like, for me, I don't know if I fully agree. I'm not decided yet, because on one hand, if I could magically just have these questions never appear in my mind, and if I were able to make anything nonsensical make sense, right, and it wasn't affecting my quality of life, it seems like it would be easier to be in that position than to be put in a position of disbelief where you're vilified for having that position, or even, the nicest Muslims still see that you're wrong and you're thought of as misguided, or sometimes arrogant or stubborn, and so on and so forth. It is, and you lose your community, and there's a lot of complications to it. But you couldn't have magically forced me to believe again, or to not think about these things. So I shouldn't be comparing a hypothetical situation to reality. And the reality is, this is the best outcome that I could have hoped for. And because of the kind of person that I am, it does weigh on me to the point that I feel like I have to come out here and be vocal about it, because I see how apostasy is received. It's not about disproving God to me. It's not about belittling people for believing or having hope in God or something like that. So I'm not quite sure if this is better than being a very devout believer, but I didn't even have that option. So yeah, I am happier now. That's for sure. It's way better than the turmoil that I was in.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree. I'm a lot happier now.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
it's a massive load off your chest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but unfortunately, in both our cases, we can't expose our identities. Certainly in the UK, it's not as safe as it would be in other countries, unfortunately. There's been incidences where people who have moved away from Islam, there's a case of a Muslim man who converted to Christianity in a city called Bradford, which is in the north of the UK, which has a very high Pakistani Muslim population. And when the community found out what he'd done, he was harangued, harassed, his house was attacked, his kids were harassed and bullied at school. And it culminated at the point where he was attacked in the street and had to be escorted out of his house by armed police. So it's unfortunately still not very safe to identify as an ex-Muslim in the UK. Thankfully, the community is growing and there are more and more people coming to the fore, but it's not quite at that point where you could openly come out and say, I'm an ex-Muslim, without fearing some form of retaliation.
Yeah, it angers me, the state of Islam in the UK right now, because I used to hear all these like nationalists, and I don't know if you want to call them right wingers or whatever other political group that are bigoted against Muslims and in general brown people, I suppose. And I used to think, when they said things like, "Oh, like Islam is causing problems in our communities," I used to think, "No, you're just anti whatever." And now I'm very conflicted, because I still don't support their rhetoric, but I see where they're coming from. I understand why they have cause to be concerned. But I would even say, like, especially Caucasians or non like people outside of this dynamic of Muslim ex-Muslim have way less to worry about than we do as apostates, obviously. And it angers me and it gets me to a point of frustration that like Muslims in the UK are given so much, like such a wide berth to be able to behave like this. And at the same time, we have to keep a delicate balance so that people don't start demonizing all Muslims in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I've been visiting, for example, Speaker's Corner for about 20 years. That unfortunately gives away my age, but I've been going there for about 20 years, and I've seen it evolve or devolve rather from this place, which was quite boring. You would see a Christian man with a sandwich board on saying the end is nigh, someone discussing communism. Very boring. It was somewhere that generally men, old white men, would go to discuss politics and religion. What's happened in the last 6 or 7 years, it's become a circus, and there's been two groups which have been very violent in that mix. One is unfortunate. I keep saying unfortunately, I shouldn't, but it's Muslims, and this goes back to the point that we shouldn't demonize all Muslims because of a handful. There are still communities of Muslims that just go about their day, don't wish harm upon anyone. But there are groups of Muslims and organizations which have an agenda, and they can be seen quite openly at Speaker's Corner. They are aggressive, violent, in your face, and the other group I'd rather not talk about. But yeah, so Speaker's Corner has now gone from a boring place to something which is pretty much like a circus, and it's being dominated by this very pernicious Muslim movement like EF Dawa. And I post videos on my TikTok page about them, and they are at the forefront, in my opinion, in the UK of promoting this very virulent form of Islamism.
Yeah. Well, sorry to have to end on such a low note, but
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you came. Finally, we got to talk for once.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Please go follow ExMask on TikTok, and yeah, thanks for coming here.
Thanks a lot, Apostate Aladdin. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Before I move on to the next caller, I noticed someone was saying, bro, stop lying. I was in Speaker's Corner. Ex-Muslims are open there. I just want to remind you, I did make a video about this, where there was an incident where a lady called Hatun Tash was stabbed in Speaker's Corner. Obviously, as soon as that happened, a lot of Dawah people came out to say it was all like a staged attack, or Ali Dawah even had like a clickbaity video about how it wasn't a Muslim who did it, when that's more likely than not false. Anyway, so I just got to remind you that this is a real risk and it does happen. And it's sad that every time like ex-Muslims do try to be a little more vocal, Muslims are often like, well, you haven't been killed yet, so you see, you're safe. Like, people keep telling me, why are you wearing a mask? Other ex-Muslims don't wear a mask and they're safe. You have no idea the amount of doxing attempts that they've been through. I've intercepted one actually once. Thankfully, it wasn't accurate at all, but it's just stop making it worse, please. Anyway, just gonna quickly read the comments. And by the way, I don't know very much about Hatun Tash. Like, I know she preaches Christianity, and I disagree with Christianity too. I know she can be very abrasive, but at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is someone was stabbed at Speaker's Corner, and it almost often, like almost always, happens in that format. But anyway, quick question before I move on to the next caller. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. I have major doubts already, and I have one burning question. How do you explain jinn possessions? I've heard that people possessed speak different languages, or all of a sudden know the whole Quran. Most of the time when you hear stories like these, they're like through word of mouth, or they're always through word of mouth. So a jinn reciting the whole Quran, absolute bullcrap. Like, always ask for some basic rudimentary level of evidence, and you'll never get it. As for jinn possessions in general, we see that in so many cultures that people interpret mental illnesses or neurological conditions as jinn possessions. And when someone's in a vulnerable state of mind, like that person who's being tied down, who's being shouted at, all sorts of different religious scripture, usually they're already born into that religion or they're familiar with it. So it's not very unlikely that they will start like being conditioned to repeat certain things or scream or shout. All I can say is, if you believe that jinn possessions like would prove Islam, you would also have to believe in Christianity and in many other like more ancient cultures that believe in some kind of possessions. So I would take it back to proving Allah or God in general shouldn't hinge on some weird occurrence or another, or some unexplainable thing. That should not be the proof for the creator. It would be pretty unwise and cruel of God to create us and have his proof be just like scattered random weird occurrences like these, and expect us to conclude that that means there are unseen entities called jinn, and that means that Islam is true. So I hope that one day you find answers that satisfy you, because I know it can be very difficult to be in the position you're in right now. Yeah, and thanks, Osiris, for the super chat. All right, Rachel, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Thanks for waiting for this long.
Oh, sure. It's been actually really interesting to see. I haven't been on your channel really very much before, so I was kind of interested to see what you guys are doing. And I love how it's like an open dialogue and you're not trying to convince anyone, but just make them question themselves and see where they're coming from. It's pretty cool.
Well, thank you. I know that this contrasts a lot with other types of content that I make. And I know people are apprehensive of me because they see a video, for example, where I point out something in Islam and I'm saying this doesn't make sense. But I treat those differently than these conversations, right? So, yeah, as you said, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything here, but I might ask questions to push back to get you to explain it a little more, if that makes sense.
Well, that's fine, because I think if somebody can't, support their beliefs, then how strong are they to begin with?
Exactly. By the way, I hear a little bit of echo. Are you using speakers or something?
No, I have this mic right here. I didn't want to get feedback from you. What if I move it? Is this better?
Yeah, closer to your mouth, I think.
Okay, I'll just sit weirdly then. Maybe I can tuck it in the side here. Can you tell I don't go on live very much? Okay, how's this?
I can still hear myself, but I think it's bearable.
All right. We'll see what happens. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So, yeah, tell me, you're a convert, right?
Right, yeah.
So how did that happen? And yeah, what convinced you?
Sure. So the turning point was a delicious artichoke and pea tagine, not joking. I was raised atheist with an emphasis on science and reasoning and questioning things and, making logical decisions, which I still absolutely do. I grew up in a predominantly Christian area of the Midwest, but I never had any of my questions to my friends or adults there answered satisfactorily. And a lot of times they would tell me, you just have to have faith, which that's really not good enough for me. So in high school and university, I kind of shifted to agnosticism, and I eventually started searching for truth in religion while at the same time realizing no religion is perfect because we're all humans. And I looked through a whole bunch of stuff, and I never even considered Islam because mostly the negative portrayal in the media, and then things like at the time women couldn't drive in Saudi Arabia. And I was like, I'm a feminist. How's this going to work? But I took a comparative religion class in university that really opened my eyes to what's actually said in Islam textually. And I kind of started lazily researching for more like academic purposes. And I never considered it for my own life till I met a small community of Muslims outside the Philadelphia area, some of whom were raised in the religion, and were immigrants, naturalized citizens, and some who were born Americans and later converted. And they were just regular people and they fit right into modern society. I was like, oh, these two things can work together. That's not as alien and as strange as I was led to believe. And it was a long path, but eventually in 2015, I did convert. There was 3 main things that convinced me in the end. One was the status of women in Islam, both in general, but especially as a reaction to the status quo at the time that the Quran was revealed. And then scientific miracles in the Quran. There's things like cosmology, there's embryology, there's evolution that are all scriptural. And then third, the commandment to continue to learn and throughout your life, because that's something I was raised with. It's something I strongly believe in. And it's something, honestly, it's kind of a reaction to the questions I asked when I was a child, what the people couldn't answer for me. And even within, my own beliefs, I continue to evolve. I've looked at a whole bunch of different stuff, Sunni beliefs, Shia beliefs, even like Salafism, which for those who don't know is super conservative, is just not my thing. But at this point today, I identify with Quranism, which rejects the Hadith, which is, I know, a very minority viewpoint, and a lot of other Muslims would not be okay with that. But yeah, that's where I am now.
Okay. I have some questions then. By the way,
Sure.
can you turn your volume, your speaker volume, a little bit down?
Down,
that
sure.
that may help with the echo a little bit.
Let me just do one up. How's that?
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Well enough, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you said the first reason was believing in, how Islam views women and how that contrasts with how they were viewed at the time, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot that I think about that. Like, for example, we cannot exactly verify that that's how they were treated before Islam because we don't have a lot of historical records about it, except what Islam says about it. But let's presume that is true. So what does that say about how Islam views women today compared to more progressive societies? Do you think Islam is in line with those progressive values completely?
I think a lot of it depends on the region you're talking about, because if you look at like the Middle East, for example, the answer is no. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm currently, geared more towards Quranism, because there's a lot of social issues that several Muslims don't subscribe to the same belief system that I do. For example, prohibition on women leading prayer. That's not from the Quran, that's from the Hadith. So no thanks.
So you believe women can lead prayer?
Sure. I think it's fine. I understand the reasons why some people don't get into it, but a lot of it's like about women standing in front of men. For those who don't know, when we pray, we go into certain body positions, and it would be guys looking at the bent over backsides of women, which that's their duty to not look if it's a problem for them. Like, it's not the duty of the woman to subjugate herself and go in the back and, be lesser than.
In my mind, a compromise would have been, if I was in your shoes, it would have been, she can lead prayer in front of, mahram men, like her husband and family members and so on. Like, that's what I would have thought as a Quranist. But even then, I feel like a woman bending in front of strange men would never be accepted in Islam. So do you find people with a similar interpretation as yours? Or do you see it more as a personal interpretation kind of thing?
I think one of the tricky things is nobody's raised in exactly the same way in the same place, nurture and nature. And I know that my previous social beliefs and the way I was raised inform a lot of what I do today. But I doubt that most people are going to say the same thing, and I agree that that's a lot more easier to swallow what you've come up with. But when we're taught to pray, a lot of times we're told to focus on a spot on the floor anyway. One of the reasons I was told is that there's other religions who look up to the sky when they do, and so we shouldn't imitate them. And you never know who got their information from where. It's tough to really figure that out. But if you're supposed to be looking down anyway, then what's the problem?
Oh well. Okay. I still have many questions because I really want to get into each one of these points. So you said about the treatment of women. So obviously, that in the Middle East, there's a lot of problems in that department. Do you think that they misunderstood Islam and that's why they're like that? They let the culture influence it, or corruption, or whatever it may be?
I've never lived there, so I can't say for sure. I did live in Morocco for about 9 months, and it was very hard. I've lived in Korea for 5 years as well, which that was actually an easy transition, but it turns out going from a first world country to a developing country is a lot different. And I was shocked, and it was difficult to walk down the street by myself. And the things that would be said to me, I was just in shock. Like, how do you think this is okay? So is it a cultural thing? Maybe. Is it misunderstanding the religion? Maybe. I think I haven't been in those societies long enough to really say for sure, and I don't want to pass a judgment on other people for that reason. So that's a tricky one, and I don't really have a good answer.
No, that's okay. I'm trying to approach it from the point of, like, you as a Muslim, how do you think the majority of the world is not following Islam the correct way, in a sense? Like, I know you wouldn't make that assertion, but do you think that?
Exactly. I'm not going to judge anybody else. I think my issue comes when other people try to restrict someone's freedom or try to condemn them, and that's my issue. So, like when we look at Christians, there's the Westboro Baptist. Like, no, thank you. And it's another reason why Salafism was absolutely not for me. There's just so much condemnation and people shouting kufar all the time, and I think it's way too much. But
I mean,
let's see. Go ahead.
How I would think about it is like, or this crossed my mind.
Mhm.
If I am taking the interpretation that I find least problematic, right, and I
Yep.
think is, or at least has room for progressiveness and
Mhm.
does belong in today's world with little conflict or no conflict,
Yep.
does that mean that the majority of the world is misled about Islam and has been for a long time? Like, for example, if I were a Quranist,
Mhm.
a lot of people are trying to get me to ask you about that in the comments, but I don't think that's the point here. If I were a Quranist, for example, do you
Mhm.
think that most Muslims are misled by Hadith?
I don't know that it's even misled. I think there's a lot of things you take at face value, especially if you're raised in the religion. I know, for example, when I was living in Morocco, people would tell me wild stuff, and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, where's your evidence? Who told you this?" "Oh, my grandfather." "Well, where did he get it from?" "Oh, he just told me." I was like, then I would go research and find out that it's a common misunderstanding. Um, and again, culture mixed with religion, it's hard to separate them sometimes, especially when it's the place you live in and that's what you were brought up with. So, are they misled? I don't know. I think a lot of times it's you trust the people who tell you things, so you don't feel a need to investigate. I don't think that's necessarily a personal failing, especially when everyone else is doing it, and especially when everyone else is telling you the same input. There's no reason to question necessarily. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not trying to pin blame on them specifically or
Mhm.
culture specifically, or what I'm trying to think is like, if people follow the Hadith, they have a
Mhm.
very different interpretation of Islam than you do, right?
Yes.
And the reality is the majority of Muslims follow the Hadith. They don't all agree on which Hadith, but the majority are
Yeah.
Sunni, and then there are Shias, and then there are, sub factions of that.
Yeah.
So I can't help but think this, back as a Muslim, are most of them wrong? Or like, did God fail at revealing his message in a way that the majority misunderstood, or they took the wrong way to try to understand him?
Ooh, that is a good question. So let's see. I have like a million thoughts in my head. I'm going to try to stay on topic. Feel free to
Yeah.
interrupt me if I go off.
That's fine.
So one of the reasons that I am currently, you know, defining myself as a Quranist is the Quran has verses in it that says this is a complete work and you don't need anything else. So why should we take all of these accounts, secondhand accounts, third-hand accounts of what the Prophet did and said, etc.? Because he was indeed a man, and I understand he's an example we're supposed to look up to, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean we have to emulate him, because a lot of people feel that's akin to placing him on the same level with God. Did God misguide people and not reveal things adequately? I think in the Quran there's enough definite structure and rules for certain things, but enough left open to interpretation to make it applicable to all times and situations. And I think that people sometimes make the wrong choice. There's a saying that I've heard several times, which is that Islam is perfect, but Muslims are not. And that is absolutely true. I know that non-Muslims won't agree with the Islam is perfect part, but I think that may be kind of getting at the answer to your question a little bit.
Well, it's still missing this part. So
Okay.
for example, I think being a Quranist makes you a lot more pacifist, and it is why people who are Quranists tend to be more progressive to begin with, or they are converts, or they come from a background where, they already have all these traits that they're kind of superimposing on Islam, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So if I were a Quranist, I would think most of the world is misled about what Allah really meant, right?
Mhm.
If they're following the hadith when Allah specifically said this is all you need, like this is a
Right.
perfect book. So I wouldn't I wouldn't understand, how did Allah miss the mark by not being able to deliver his message to the majority of humans today and historically, and
Mhm.
even within the Muslims, the majority misunderstood still. You know what I mean? Does that
Mhm.
ever cross your mind, or how do you
It
resolve
has
that?
not. And
Okay.
that's something I'd have to reflect on a bit before I could say
Okay.
something
Yeah.
eloquent, or even complete.
No,
Like I
I
said,
like that.
otherwise I'm going to end up way
Yeah.
over here, you know?
I like that. Sometimes, like, I've done that before too, where I don't have a conclusion about something yet, or I haven't thought about it, so I'm not
Mhm.
gonna just, talk about it at the
Yeah.
moment.
I don't want
Okay.
to eat my words later.
That's fine. Even if you have to, I think that's part of growth, is being willing to eat your words and learn from there.
Oh, yeah.
I still have a lot of questions, so
Sure.
stop me if at any point you want to go. So a question. Okay, I'm tempted to go down the Quranist path for a second.
Okay.
So when you're trying to understand what Allah means in the Quran, or what His words mean,
Mhm.
There is no way to understand that unless you go to some kind of translation, or even if you do understand Arabic, the Arabic is so far like removed in so many ways from today's
Right.
Arabic. You would understand what's going on, but not all the context specifically. So
Right.
aside from the language barrier and the language barrier that an Arab would have, there's a lot of context that is missing. Like sometimes you
Mhm.
would look at other verses to infer what happened, and like it meshes together.
Yeah.
But there are so many stories that are just like, it's just a snippet of a story, and the rest is in the ahadith or sirah. So where do you get the interpretation or context from if you leave the ahadith and sirah aside?
What a good question. I'm just going to lean over here and grab something. 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. So I have a number of different translations, and you're correct. I read everything in translation because my Arabic is restricted to a couple of greetings and being able to tell someone off for street harassing me. But
The useful stuff.
yeah, the basics, the everyday things you
Yeah.
need. So this one is my favorite. It's also the wrong direction, thickest. This
Okay.
is the Meaning of the Holy Quran Extended Study Edition, presented by Yahya Emmerich. Each chapter, as well as several subsections, depending on which part we're looking at, start with the place where it was revealed, what was going on at that time, because the Quran, again, this is not for you, this is for other people watching, is not in like chronological order or anything. It's in a different order. So there's things that were revealed at different times that end up showing up at different places from different locations, from different situations, and sometimes in a response to questions that the people of that time and place were asking. So it starts out kind of each chapter giving you information on that, and then it'll give a little brief introduction to, this is what this section is going to talk about, and these are the things you need to look for. And then there's certain words where it'll say the translation of this has this nuance. There's extensive footnotes as well, which again comment more on the historical context, which, as you said, we can't know fully and with complete certainty, but it's what we can get. So this one I feel is the most useful for questions like that.
So these explanations or context that they put in,
Mhm.
they wouldn't have gotten it from anywhere except the sirah and hadith and whatever other written work that is in the Quran isn't the Quran. So how do we take that bias? There's always going to be personal interpretation bias, and there's always going to
Yep.
be the bias of the scholar interpreting it. But on top of all that, there's also the bias of these secondary sources.
Mhm.
So that is the part that really confused me, and I've always wanted to ask a Quranist. So how do you think that you rely on these secondary sources, but you dismiss the parts of them that you don't think are right?
Oh, well, I think the parts of them that sound a bit off is usually the stuff I go and research a bit deeper and see what people tend to say. But I think it's both the beauty and the danger of the Google age. The fact that we have so much knowledge at our fingertips, but then how do you know what's reliable and accurate? Whose bias, whose agenda are you subscribing to?
I mean, aside from the scholars, just or the people on the internet, like the text that is used to interpret like the whatever other sorts of secondary scripture, how do you eliminate that completely as a Quranist and still understand the Quran? anyway, it could be one of those things that, like, you know, you don't need to answer on the spot, but
Yeah.
I was just curious if it's something that, you know, came to mind before.
No, not necessarily. I'd say I've only learned of this word, like, when I gave a little introduction, I guess I don't remember if I mentioned this, but there were a lot of issues that I had with the way that people would demonize certain things. I know the one we talked about was women leading prayer, but like polygyny as well, the fact that men can have all these wives, but women can't, you know, for breeding purpose. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that, but for reproductive purposes, I get how it makes sense. But, you know, today doesn't really matter. LGBT issues, there's so many people who are socially progressive on so many things, but this one, they say, oh, this is a sin, this is terrible, you're going straight to hell. And this is how people were made. It's not a choice, it's not a lifestyle, it's the way they are. Like, what's if you don't like it, then don't do it yourself.
How do you feel about that then? So that is one more thing that always crossed my mind. If God truly was inclusive, and it wouldn't make sense that God would create gay people and then be like, you get an extra special test of dying alone because I don't like it when you touch genitals. If that is like, if you truly believe that God is better than that, and I did, you know, that's kind of what pushed me out of religion. God must be better than that. So how come using God's message, the majority of the Muslims in the world misunderstood that that's what you meant? Like, I would expect a little better from God.
Yeah, I think a lot of people point to the story of Lot, which the way I read it is about self-control, lawfulness, and consent, not about same-sex relationships, which again is a minority viewpoint. I know that. But yeah, excuse me, I agree with you that there's so many either explicit or, you know, more nuanced references to peace and love and acceptance. And I think that's what I choose to focus on. And condemning or demonizing other people, I don't think we're ever going to know for sure where anyone's going to end up. For those who believe there's somewhere else we go. And there's only one being, entity, that can decide that. And so for the rest of us to try to cast blame or, you know, categorize people as wrong.
Okay. So you see it as a personal interpretation of what is good, right? And following that. And you think you just got to do your best and not worry about how other people interpret it, right?
Can you say it one more time? Sorry, because I was foolishly glancing at the comments and getting distracted.
Oh, just ignore the comments completely.
Yeah.
That's what I do. So you think it's a personal interpretation where you get to like find a kind of an amalgam of, or like a mix of what you think is morally correct and what Allah intended to tell us, right? Or you think it aligns with what is innately morally correct, and that's the interpretation you choose?
I like the second one you said a little bit better, because I think I'm going to get less hate for it. But yeah, I think, like I said, there's certain parts that are left open to interpretation, and I think that's for a reason. And I think that means we're free to interpret it, and it doesn't mean I have to take someone else's viewpoint if I disagree with it, because we're both human. So why is my view any less valid than theirs?
Okay. I know there's two more points. So you said the reason why you believed Islam is from God is because of how it treated women and how much of an upgrade that was from their situation at the time, because of scientific miracles or scientific claims in the Quran that couldn't have been known otherwise. And an initiative to always learn, right? Okay, so I'm not going to comment on the third one much. The second one, I still want to revisit the first one real quick. So a verse like, for example, I'm sure you've heard of it, the verse about wife beating, for example. How do you interpret that verse?
Okay, so I looked into that a lot. And in the end, what I found from other people who also found it very problematic was that the exact references are not to beating somebody necessarily, like abusing them, but to, you know, reminding them and finding different ways to do it. And the exact instruction for how it's meant to be done is like with like a miswak, which is like a herbal toothbrush, like a pencil. And it's supposed to be like tappity tap, which is still a bit demeaning and what's it called? Like when you talk down to a
Infantilizing?
child. Sorry?
Infantilizing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the word that comes to mind. Yeah.
That's a good one. But it's absolutely not a permission or a incentive or anything to abuse somebody, which is definitely something that a lot of people misunderstand, misinterpret, and take way too far.
Okay.
So yeah.
I will be talking about that topic in future videos, so
Okay.
I'm not gonna like grill you on it.
Okay.
But,
yeah, don't give away all your content for free.
No, I do want to talk about, like, I vehemently disagree with that interpretation. Not because I want women to be beaten, but I'm saying like based on the language and based on the scholarship behind this and so on and so forth. But taking your interpretation and following from there, why do you think it only goes one way? Why isn't there a verse about the wife infantilizing the man if he doesn't listen to her advice and doesn't, after sleeping in a separate bed, still not listening and so on?
Do you want my real answer to that?
Yeah.
I think because women are smart enough to know what to do anyway. I think men need a lot more direction.
So why wouldn't, like, that is more reason to give permission to do that to the man, right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
So the verse says that the man can do that to the wife, right, with a miswak or something. Why isn't there a verse about the opposite? Or
so there's also a verse that says basically anything that's not made haram, like prohibited, is halal. So she's not prohibited from doing that, so she can. It just doesn't specifically lay out this is what you have to do. I think men perhaps need those rules. These are the limits, these are the steps, whereas women perhaps can figure it out on their own. I think that's part of the reason why there's all these things related to what you're going to get in heaven. For men, you're going to get these dark-eyed women, etc. They need all these incentives, and men are very visual. And I realize this is generalization, but I have evidence from my own life. I think women can kind of delay gratification and not necessarily need an incentive, and can kind of figure things out a bit better. I'm not some sort of radical feminist, social justice warrior or anything by any means, but I do think there's some differences that are addressed in these ways.
I saw an interesting follow-up in the comments.
Yeah.
So if whatever is not made haram is halal, it doesn't explicitly say that women are not allowed to marry for men. So do you think that by the same logic would be halal?
Wow. I've never thought about that.
I hadn't either, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a good one. Whoever asked that, good for you. Love it. Let's see. I'd have to go and look if there's anything else that talks about it, that gives any guidance. So I know. Oh, Cyrus, super chat guy.
Cyrus,
okay, cool. Yeah. So how should I say this? Yeah, I'd have to go and see exactly what's said, because I know that there's a verse that says to men and women equally, it's better to marry a believing slave than a disbeliever, but it doesn't specifically say you can't. And then it also says for men, you can marry women of the book, but it doesn't speak on women's restrictions,
etc. Is that a hadith
etc.
or a verse you're saying?
I am pretty sure that that's in the Quran, but I could be wrong.
I haven't memorized the whole thing, but
Yeah, me neither by any means.
No, I don't think there's a verse about that example of like a better a Muslim slave than a disbeliever. So that
okay,
might
I'll have to go back and check.
Yeah,
I may have misread something.
Hadith.
I'll have to go back and check. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I want to wrap this up with where was I going with this? So what you presented, like your interpretation of how Islam views women, you still think it is consistently good, right? It's just that people are misinterpreting it, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of history and like ingrained traditions that mess things up a bit, or a lot.
Do you think, I mean, I would say, even if that were true, right? I would say the author did a poor job if the case is the majority of Muslims will, as you put it, like they would have their biases, their culture, whatever would influence God's word to be misunderstood. I would say the author wasn't explicit enough. That's my opinion. But the question here is, so do you see how someone seeing this like for example, how Islam describes the heavenly rewards for men, you know, the
Mhm.
women, and goes into some detail about their features, be it in the Hadith or Quran. One could conclude that this is geared towards men because it clearly, like, it was just kind of a way to entice men to join the religion, not because men are visual creatures or so on.
Mhm.
Do you see that? I'm not telling you that this is the correct interpretation in your mind, but do you see where someone could be coming from if they think that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think
Okay, the follow-up, so just to not like, I don't mean to get you to expand on that
sure.
specifically, but
Yep.
so if someone does view it that way, do you think they're disbelieving in Islam and viewing it that way because of a moral error in them, or because that's just the conclusion that, you know, people think differently? Like, do you think they're a bad person for that conclusion, or do you think, like, is there a bias in them that they want to be a disbeliever and that's why they arrived at that conclusion that this is clearly entice men rather than, you know, misunderstood?
No, I think there's a whole multitude of reasons why people might choose or not choose any particular religion. There's so many choices out there. I think people's decisions are informed by so much, and it's so subjective. Um, Anybody who's not Muslim, that's their business. Like, you never know what may happen in the future in either direction. And, you know, that doesn't mean we can't all, you know, work together, get along, etc. I just wish people could be a bit more open-minded and understanding of people who have different beliefs than themselves.
Okay, I do like that answer, but the last follow-up I would have is,
Mhm.
do you know, or do you think we know as a general rule? Obviously, we can't rule on who's going to hell and who's going to heaven, but as a general rule, do disbelievers go to heaven, or do they have a shot at heaven if they
A
die a
shot,
disbeliever?
sure, absolutely.
If they die a disbeliever?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the circumstances, but again, I'm not one who can pass a judgment on that because
Okay.
I don't know everybody's, you know, secret actions and their thoughts and their intentions, because I think intention counts for a lot, because there's so many factors that limit our actions, and I don't think it's something that I can decide on. That's not my place.
Okay. So to put it simply, do you think that um, disbelievers can go to heaven based on their, like, the merit of what they did rather than just their belief in Islam or not?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and if that is your conclusion, then a lot of what you said, you know, makes sense, or at least it all ties together. Because
Mhm.
I find it very difficult to believe, you know, that people are going to hell for disbelieving, and at the same time believe that Allah, you know, a lot of people misunderstand Allah, and it's not a problem, right? Like, one of
Yeah.
these has got to be a problem. But anyway, that makes sense. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure a
Yeah,
lot
me
of
too.
people watching did as well. So thank you very much for joining us and having this open dialogue.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for hosting and being so, yeah, open, I think is the best word. It
Yeah.
seems like you've been through a lot, and to engage with all of this is pretty admirable.
Thank you. I can be blunt sometimes, but I'm still trying to come at it from, you know, I do want to hear your thoughts, so I'm just going to
Mhm.
come out and say it.
Yeah,
But
that's fine. That's what I'm here for.
yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us,
Yeah,
Rachel.
absolutely.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so it's been 2 hours, but this is going great, so I guess let's keep going. I don't know if I'm going to share the link one more time. I have 3 callers lined up. Let's start with a Muslim dude. I know he had some objections in the private chat. He was talking about how there is a verse that shows that you must, you know, take the hadith to be valid, or you must listen to the prophet. I didn't look up the verses that you're talking about, but I know that there is one verse that comes to mind that says, ما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم. It is not up to a believing man or woman to, if Allah or His Messenger, or if Allah and His Messenger decreed something, that they would have an option in the matter. So I don't know if that's the verse you're quoting, but anyway, what I want to say is the point here is not to argue with Rachel about whether she is right or wrong in being a Quranist. I was just trying to understand where she's coming from. Sorry, and there is a Muslim slave is better than a polytheist. Okay, Rachel was correct. That is a verse. A Muslim dude says it is Surah 221. So Al-Baqarah, I believe 221. Anyway, I'm adding a Muslim dude and then Anon Ex and then Truth and Knowledge. So 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going, Muslim dude? I think you're muted. Let's give him a second. Oh, Muslim dude is not ready yet. Okay, I'm gonna take Anon X. In 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing, bro?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm alright, yeah. Okay, the reason why I wanted to call in was because I myself am an ex-Muslim, and
Okay.
I thought it would go like you ask a question and then I respond. I forget how it goes.
Like you want me to ask you? So, what do you believe right now? Are you just an ex-Muslim or?
Right now I'm an agnostic, so I don't believe in the claims of any religion, and at the same time I don't believe that there's substantial evidence to say that there's no creator, and if there is a creator, which I am hit or miss on, it wouldn't be anything like what these religious texts are claim. So it'd be something completely out of our understanding or anything that we have written so far by humans.
You know what? I kind of, I think I share that position pretty much. I don't care if there's a creator or not, because to arrive from the conclusion that there is one and it wants us to do this and that and worship it.
That's where I have exactly.
Yeah.
That's where my issue lies as well. And
so when people ask you, are you atheist or agnostic, what do you say?
I have. That's what I wanted to get into as well. I have a few friends. Well, the bulk of my mates are Muslim, and all my family, well, majority of them are Muslim as well. And I've told my the close members of my family and close friends that I'm not. I don't believe anymore. And they've asked me the same question, like, are you an atheist or agnostic? And I tell them that I'm an agnostic. And so obviously it's been a bit difficult explaining things to them. It's been a bit easier to explain it to my brothers because they know me more than my mates know me. So they know, and obviously their softness to me is a lot more greater than my friends. My friends, they understand it. There's some friends I just cannot tell, but I've told a few mates who, although they're not happy with it, of course they're not angry with it, they're concerned in a way that's like bro, we should go pray, we should try and do something about this. Exactly, just so they can try and save me, as obviously they don't want to put it like that, but it's how I see it. And my brothers aren't really like that. My brothers are more like I think that the sort of family drama that me and my family are facing right now, they see it like that. They see it's a way of me sort of breaking out of that bit of drama and me putting Islam sort of with the drama. But I don't really see it like that. The way, of course, there's some drama in my family, but it's nothing to do with religion. It's got a lot more to do with culture, I think. But the thing that led me to question religion was because when I was in college and university, I was part of an ISOC. I don't know if you know what an ISOC is. It's an Islamic society of that like institution. So I used to be quite religious when I was younger, and so I used to be like the preachy friend. He'd be like, "Bro, you can't go out with this girl. It's not right." And my friends would get pissed off at me, and those friends are the same Muslim friends that I'm telling I'm not Muslim anymore. So that used to happen a lot until when I reached university and I met a lot of other people. It's a very diverse university, and one of my best mates there was a bisexual, and he was ex-Christian. He used to be a very strict Christian, and also have a trans mate and a few other mates that are just like straight up agnostic and Christian and Jewish. And so I asked my bi mate, because he's like my closest mate in uni, and he told me that asked him about his religion and why did he leave it, and he's like, he basically said that he can't believe that God would punish him for being the way that he is and the way that he was born, and not only that, but also this isn't something he's told me, but just getting to know the guy and getting really close with this guy as a mate. I'm not bi, I'm not gay, so if people are going to say that in the comments, that's not what it is. I'm not falling for the guy. What it is that I've seen the guy's actual character and his morals and his ethics, and I just got to say to myself that, like, this guy is a non-Muslim, and by my logic at the time, this guy would be going to hell forever just because he doesn't believe, and also he might be a bit more worse for him because he's bisexual.
There's an
so
extra punishment
yeah, it's
for
a
gays and
bonus
bisexuals.
punishment there. So that's something that I had to wrestle with for a while. It's like a lot of my non-Muslim mates, they were gonna suffer eternally for just not being convinced or being the way that they are, or like, you know, wanting equal rights for, you know, women and LGBT people. And I just couldn't stomach that. So I did a lot of research about, because when I was being very religious, I was convinced, like 100%. I was watching a lot of these Islamic lectures. So I always thought that 100% this is what Islam is, and this Islam is 100% true because this is where I'm getting my information. It's very biased, basically. Eventually, I was like, okay, if I'm going to believe in this religion and I'm going to be, you know, strong in my conviction that my mates, as much as I love them, these guys are going to hell. I got to convince myself that Islam is the truth. And so what I did was I was trying to really make it so that I can really how do I put this? I wanted to beat my faith up, basically. I wanted to put it in front of criticism. I want to see how well it held up. And so that's when I was listening to a lot of scientists talking about the creation of the universe, evolution of humans, you know, all that sort of stuff, biology, physics, you know, geology, and you know, the way they, you know, basically everything about the universe, you know, and how it doesn't really line up with religious doctrine.
That it's pretty interesting that, like, I was with you. I mean, in my, at least, like, similarities in my journey, till you lost me at the point where you wanted to, as you put it, like, beat up your faith or put it to the test, right? What you're
Yeah,
trying to do is, sort of like, is that like steel manning? No, not exactly. But anyway, I didn't do that. I wasn't, I suppose, like, brave enough to do that. But I arrived at, like, similar conundrums where I was thinking, what about, like, this gay person, or what about this non-believer? Part of it was before I ever met them, and then when I did meet them, it was even more strongly so that I kept thinking to myself, these seem like perfectly fine people. Like, some of them are
yeah,
nicer than my Muslim friends, so how come they
exactly.
don't
Yeah,
even get a shot, at
yeah,
heaven?
exactly.
It's funny how we all, like, not all of us, but a lot of ex-Muslims come from this angle of, like, excessive empathy. I don't know if it's excessive or the right amount of
Just general
empathy.
empathy, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. Is it, like, how can you just be okay with so many people going to hell? Like,
it's
if
it's very odd. Sorry, I cut you off there. You can finish.
no, I was just gonna say, like, the only way I can, like, somehow, if I could remain a Muslim, if all my other contentions were answered, and
Yeah,
this conundrum of, like, everybody who's a good person is going to hell if they don't believe, the only way, like, I could make those two work is if I dedicated every waking second of my life into making as many people join Islam to be saved, as
exactly.
possible.
Yeah,
So seeing
exactly.
complacent Muslims made no sense to me. Like, how are you not freaked out right now?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Honestly, when you said that, it's not that I was. I wouldn't call myself brave for doing that because since sixth form, and sixth form is what we call college in the UK.
okay.
Since sixth form and since university, I actually was. I had a few doubts, but as I said, because my view of Islam was so biased, I was taking it from a biased source and from basically all my relatives and friends. And I used to also come to my own conclusion and sort of try to make it work for myself. And I kind of brushed a bunch of the stuff that I didn't really get under the carpet. Obviously, I'm sure you know a few of those You know, it's things like sex slavery and, you know, the Prophet's married to Aisha, and
I didn't know any of that growing up. Like, nobody told me in the Muslim world. No one talks about this stuff.
it's crazy because I knew it, and I tried to justify it, but I was like, even when I tried to justify it, I was just like, but this is the perfect man, apparently. And he's, you know, if it was Henry VIII marrying a 16-year-old, I'd be like, yeah,
Man,
but
I'm
this
so
guy's not a
tired of
perfect person.
so
Yeah,
tired of hearing about Henry.
yeah,
Like, everyone just
exactly.
keeps bringing him up.
Yeah, but then it's like, but this guy never claimed to be the perfect
Yeah.
example of mankind, and he's still a trashy person for doing it. You know, he's not a perfect person. Like every single sort of leader in history is a mix of bad and good, and you know, and the Prophet's no exception. So that's the sort of stuff that I had to go through, and yeah, it's been crazy. And I do want to get something out. Before you have any questions, or before I just switch to the next person, you switch to the next person. I want to say that like in the comments, I realized, especially when the sister Rachel was on, I call her sister. It's like an Islamic instinct nowadays.
Yeah.
I felt like a lot of people weren't there to give any actual criticism in the comments. It was just to like bang on about how her version of Islam was the wrong version. And a lot of the times I read, it's not even Muslims saying it. It's actually non-Muslims and Christians and this. And I'm like,
Oh,
you
one
know,
second. I just want to give a shout out to the Christians in the comments, and don't take that out of context. I think a lot of them misunderstand the point of this channel, and
yeah,
they think that we're some sort of
this
allies
is
in some
a
ways.
Muslim bashing show.
Yeah, I mean, it's either that or they're like trying to gather ammo against Islam or whatever it may
Exactly.
be.
Yeah,
I just want them to know, like, if you want to be here and listen, you're more than
that's
welcome to
fine.
just apply the same logic to your own religion as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not.
Right.
It's not a. Yeah, exactly. The
A lot of the
questioning.
shortcomings. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
your religion too. But anyway, yeah, sorry, I
exactly.
interrupted. Keep
No, it's
going.
fine. But my point was that when people tell like Rachel what Islam should be, I think that's the wrong way to go. If you're a Muslim or even a non-Muslim, a Muslim that or an ex-Muslim, which is, I think you should be even more lenient with a lot of these Muslim views, is because progressive Muslims is what is gonna change the face of Islam the way we felt it as, you know. So to say that to paint all Muslims as a, you know, in single paintbrush is very wrong, and to dismiss Rachel's views as you know, deviant or you know, very, you know, misguided, it's wrong, because you know, she's come to her conclusions of what Islam is, and she should be allowed to do that. You know, who are you to tell someone that, you know, this is you're following the wrong Islam? And you know, according, you know, it's like, I don't think people should be doing that. You know, it's the same sort of conservatism that ex-Muslims should be against, by telling someone, you know, yeah, you're wrong, and your version of Islam sucks, and this version of Islam is the version of Islam, and you know, all that sort of stuff.
I mean,
It's not something that
I hear where
obviously
you're
there's
coming from.
I
Yeah,
don't want to bash your work, because I know your work is
go ahead,
it's
bash it.
constructive it's constructive criticism, and that's the thing, is that we need is constructive criticism, and we can be able to have that, you know, constructive debates, and you know, poke a little fun in there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But to tell someone that their Islam is wrong just because it doesn't line up with yours, and they're not causing any harm. I don't see Rachel causing any harm with her views. Her views seem very in line with the modern sort of society today, you know, like to bash someone for it, I think is wrong, and especially for ex-Muslims, where we should be. I'm not saying we should be above it. It's like we're not superior, but I'm saying that, you know, we should understand it more than anything. You know.
Yeah. No, I partially agree with you. I mean, I agree with the sentiment as well. The comments, I keep telling people in the comments, focus on the point of these talks. So
Yeah.
even though it is very easy for me to sometimes pull a hadith or a verse and be like, but you're wrong because this says, there's no point in doing that. Like, there were people who wanted to challenge, or even Muslims, funny enough, saying, no, you're wrong. You can't be a Quranist
Yeah,
because this and that.
it's very silly.
Yeah, I'm just asking leading questions to see, okay, as a Quranist, what do you think about this and that?
Yeah, no, that's the point of the show, exactly.
Yeah. But at the same time, so when people are, for example, progressive Islamic or just have some kind of loose personal interpretation of Islam, they're not causing harm, and that's why I don't like badger Rachel about her beliefs and be like, but you're wrong because this and that. That's what a
Yeah,
Salafi would do, right?
exactly.
So
Yeah, I did not like that growing up.
yeah, so I wouldn't do that. But if it was someone else who is in a position that is preaching Islam, I think we have every right to not approach it in a hostile way, but to question them. If
Yeah, of
they're in a
course.
position of preaching, you better bet I'm going to question every single thing that they say because
Yeah,
they can't leave gaps, right? They can't preach something because they're not preaching Islam in a different label. They're still at the
exactly.
same, like at the end of the day, preaching Islam. So I don't like giving Islam like positive PR when the majority of it isn't that progressive interpretation. You know what I mean?
I get what you mean, but
Yeah.
I
But
do
but
agree with
not in
you
the
that
context of these chats, right?
yeah, no, I get you completely. When it comes to a bunch of these dour people, or if not all of them, because these people really put themselves out in public to
Mhm.
to claim that Islam is the one true religion, to claim this and that. You know, I think it's fair game. Yeah, go for it. You know, like bash on them as much as you can. You know what I mean? Obviously within reason, without getting personal. But like, yeah, it's open to criticism. Every single religion, every single belief system should be open to criticism. It's when it comes to certain your everyday Muslims that I mean, like, and you know, people might not put, you know, people might not give a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, they don't give them the credit of just being, you know, just like them, and that's the reality of a lot of Muslims nowadays. Especially in my life, is that obviously there's some friends that I don't tell, but a lot of the friends that I do have, and you know, my brothers, who I love sincerely, like they are the face of Islam as I see it in the West today nowadays, and so it's the everyday Muslims you see on the street, not the ones that are at speakers corner preaching, but the ones who are at your schools, the ones who are at your work, the ones who, you know, want to go out with you, the ones who take you, you know, to Fort Park, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
I
those are the
I agree with
ones.
that.
Yeah,
I definitely do, and I always say, maybe I should say it more often. I think like on average, Muslims are better than Islam. I think
yeah, exactly.
they're
Yeah,
just humans like us, but they're held back, just like people of other religions are held back in specific areas cognitively.
yeah,
I don't know if you want to call it morally, definitely morally, by
definitely.
their religion, right?
Yeah,
So it's a delicate balance because you gotta address like prevalent bad beliefs and bad habits and call it things that have seeped into culture or from culture,
yeah,
whatever it is. Even if the people are just everyday people in every other context. Like, for example, most Muslims are like very agreeable. You get along with them like any other person down
mm,
the street. Like they're
yeah,
just going about their everyday life. They're not thinking about the validity of Islam. They're not thinking about the Prophet and his wives and this and that.
yeah, exactly.
Um, but like a lot of them have very negative reactions towards any criticism of Islam. Like it's
Yeah,
not like you go down the street and tell somebody to listen to you. Like I'm an ex-Muslim, listen to me. Your religion sucks. They
yeah,
seek it out or they come across it, and then the reaction is hostile from a lot of Muslims. I'm not going to say the majority, but a huge sizable chunk. So
yeah. That's the
yeah,
unfortunate part.
there are problems contextually that are widespread that I think need to be addressed, but especially people who are outside this Muslim ex-Muslim dynamic, you have a lot less to worry about in general. So, don't bother.
Right.
Yeah.
On that point, I do disagree with you a little bit, just because I feel like conservative. I think it's just a problem with conservatism, honestly, is that if you're a conservative of any religion, you're gonna be. Sorry, I don't want to mince words, but you're gonna be a prick. You know, you're gonna want to force your views down other people. You're gonna be like, my view is the correct view. Your views diminish other people's rights, and I think that's it's just a problem with conservatism. And the more that, you know, we bash liberal Muslims or liberal Christians or liberal Jews, you know, it doesn't matter where they come from, back, you know, in terms of background, you know, it's just gonna continue to be the same, you know, where conservative Muslims or conservative Christians or whatever are offended over certain things that shouldn't be much of an issue, you know?
Fair. I agree with that part. It's just that I think when we isolate these problems to being too conservative, we forget that the majority of Muslims are moderates, and they still have, like, for example, hostility towards apostates or
I wouldn't say they're
yeah.
hostile. I'd say that their views are negative, but I wouldn't say they're
Okay.
hostile.
That's a good, yeah, you're right there. I need to correct that. Yeah, they view them negatively, maybe behave towards them negatively, but hostility is a little bit of a higher threshold.
Yeah, hostility. The picture I get in my head is like pitchforks and knives.
Yeah, but okay, this is not PC to say, but it is common enough that it is a problem, even if it is not a significant, like a much higher percentage. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's significant enough to be a problem, and the problem is when you tell people not to generalize or not to discriminate. And I always, like, every person I meet, Muslim or otherwise, I try to start with as clean of a slate as I can. But you get to a point where, like, for example, ex-Muslims do have reasonable reason to be apprehensive when they
Of
meet a
course.
Muslim, whether they tell them or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
As I said, I wouldn't tell a few friends about me leaving Islam, and it's no doubt that there is an issue, especially in Muslim countries, with their treatment to apostates or homosexuals or even women. Yeah, it's definitely an issue there, but I don't want it to be a sort of stereotype where it's like, yeah, you're a Muslim, so you must want to hang all gays, you must want to slap all your wives up, you must want to do this and all that. Of course it's a problem, but at the same time we shouldn't. It's generalizing is what I don't like, but no, I completely agree with you. The Muslim world has a big problem with just treatment of apostates and gays and women, and it's just, of course, I'm definitely against that. It's one of the reasons why I don't like Saudi Arabia. I wouldn't give them a penny.
Yeah, Hajj and Umrah, they just
exactly.
keep raking it in every year.
I advise my brothers, from a logical standpoint, not to donate to any Saudi sort of charities, just because of how horrible they are. Not even to their own people, but to like less fortunate people in other countries like Yemen. And it's like, you do know they're napalming kids over there. It's like,
I don't want to get too political now, but
yeah, I don't want to either. But I'm just saying that there is issues there, 100%, and they shouldn't be ignored. But at the same time, you should understand that this is Saudi Arabia as a government as well. These people are not the most religious people on the planet.
No, I think Saudi Arabia as a government is even different than the residents there. At least, even the majority, like non-Saudi residents in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, and I always tell people not to look at Saudi Arabia as an example. Even as a Muslim, I told them that's not an example of what the average Muslim or Islam is like or anything like that. But yeah.
Funnily enough, I met a Saudi friend. Friends might be a bit too much of a strong word, but an acquaintance in uni, and I told him, like, because he was doubting the religion far before I was, and he was telling me, like, yeah, dude, a lot of people from Saudi are not vibing with the religion. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, this is literally the home of Islam. How is that? How is that like? How is that possible? And he literally just told me, like, Saudi children nowadays are growing up with sort of access to the internet, sort of TV shows, Western media.
They can't be censored. Like, they're gonna come across these ideas, and they can very easily look up religious stuff themselves too. It's not about anti-Islam propaganda or anything.
Yeah,
they have more access to Islamic scripture. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Really, it's just openness to the internet is what they're really getting at. Yeah. So because of that, a lot of them, they meet. And here's a common thing I've noticed with a lot of ex-Muslims or Muslims you begin to doubt. It's when they get out of their their comfort zone of being around
Mhm.
the sort of status quo of your Muslim family or your Muslim friend group, and you get out and you meet John from Costco, who who used to be a Christian and is now an atheist, or like Joanne, who's a trans woman, something like that.
Mhm.
And you become
That
mates with them.
exposure, a lot of us like don't get. Be it even in the West, apparently a lot
Exactly,
of
yeah.
people live in communities where it's so tight knit that this is your reality up until you go to
Yeah,
university or something.
yeah. And sometimes I don't really blame them, just because of how it's just
I get it. Yeah,
I get it. You know what I mean?
I
I
would have
don't
been
want
in
to
their position at that point too. Is what I
exactly.
think.
It's
I was in their
same.
position.
As was I. It's until I hit uni where
Mhm.
it's just so diverse. People come from all sorts of backgrounds. Literally, I told you about the Saudi Arabian person, and then
Mhm.
I have a trans mate and I have a bisexual mate. They're from the UK, but the fact that there's so many different sort of orientations and backgrounds and religious backgrounds, and now sort of just non-belief now. It's
Yeah,
like it's like the best place to finally question your views. It really is a place to open your mind up a bit, be a bit
especially
more
if other
open.
people are questioning their views and you see that how similar they are.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. The Saudi Arabian dude. I don't want to say his name just because he hasn't given me permission. I haven't told him I was going to come on here anyway. But he shocked me when he first told me that. I was shocked. I was like, "What? You're crazy, bro." But now I get it. The more I looked into it, and the more a lot of my friends. Obviously, I'm not gonna tell the chat that like they're the reason I became non-Muslim, because I don't want to give them. I don't want to give some people that satisfaction, like, oh, the only reason you left is because you're friends. You're closeted homosexual, aren't you? No, it's literally nothing like that at all. What it is literally just it's really just being more open. Literally, as Rachel said, just be more open and opening yourself up to sort of like criticism and just questioning your strongest beliefs.
Mhm.
And hopefully you come to a version of yourself that you'll finally be able to live with and be comfortable with, like Rachel has. I think she's a
Mhm.
perfect example of that. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining the call.
thanks for having me.
It's always nice hearing from an ex-Muslim, even though I don't intend these live streams to include ex-believers. I find that it's
Yeah,
interesting to hear, how they stopped, like why they believed at first and how they got out of it. So yeah,
yeah.
thank you for sharing with us today.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me. And I
Yeah.
enjoy your content as well. I've been looking at it. I've been looking at a lot of your content. I started off with obviously I told you about scientists, and eventually came to Hassan Radwan, and I
Oh yeah,
really enjoyed his content just because I feel like it was non-offensive, very factual,
free
very
of drama, none of that stuff. Yeah,
very like it's just rational thinking,
respectful too.
respectful, scientific
To a
all
fault,
in a
I'd
way.
say, but no, I'm joking. But
I think
yeah,
that he was a perfect,
yeah,
people might have seen this, but a die for agnosticism.
exactly. Yeah,
So yeah, no,
yeah.
he did a phenomenal job, and then I found your channel next, and I genuinely believe that you two are the you guys helped me out of a lot of anxiety that I had with and a lot of just like fears about residual fears that come from leaving and stuff. So
I'm
yeah, no, you
really
guys
happy
helped
to
me out
hear
with that
that.
a lot, and thank you, and continue with the good work, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
All right. I was joking when I said that Hassan Radwan was too respectful. He was also a big part of my basically giving me comfort after I have concluded that Islam is not true. So I didn't expose myself to a lot of this content, partly because I distrusted anyone who was not pro-Islam, even as I was doubting, even in that process. So I understand when people, think bad things of me and they think I'm not trustworthy and so on. So I waited till after I had concluded that this cannot be from God. And that's when I came across content creators who were vocal ex-Muslims, and Hassan Radwan was one of them. I really recommend that you go watch his videos. I don't know if he makes videos as much now. He writes some blog posts, I believe, and those are worth reading as well, his articles. But it was very reassuring to me because it wasn't just that I was hearing some, rebellious, annoying kid talking about how atheism is hip. I was listening to a man who actually went through this. Like, he has no reason to let go of Islam closer to his death for any silly earthly reason. No one ever leaves Islam because they want to, drink instead of go to heaven and drink all they want there. So it was reassuring to hear like a mature, calm person talk about it. So I definitely recommend him. Yeah, anyway, I got 2 more callers, so I'm going to try to get through those. I can't add anyone else today, but thank you all for watching. I've got a Muslim dude. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going, Muslim dude?
I'm doing good, and you?
Not too bad, thanks. So tell me, why do you believe Islam is the truth?
Well, there's many reasons. First of all, it's a little hard to conceive of a universe without a necessary being. You look at all the fears we have.
Wait, sorry. Before you begin, I want to ask, let me rephrase it. What made you believe that Islam is the truth? Not, for example, not what proof exists and so on. For you, what drove you to believe that Islam is the truth?
I mean, there's many miracles in the Quran. I mean, for the Quran in and of itself is a miracle. It's very hard to conceive how a book 600 pages long.
No, is that why you believe? Like, is that what got you to believe in Islam?
That's one of the reasons. I mean, I was born in a Muslim family, right? But I mean, that's not what made me really be Muslim. You get what I mean? Everyone's born in a Christian family, Muslim family. But what made me really believe that Islam is truly the truth and research it and understand what Islam is all about was the miracles that Islam provides for us.
So you spoke about the Quran in itself being a miracle. So you believe that it is linguistically miraculous, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's very hard to deny this, right? Because how can a 600-page book be memorized by millions of 5-year-olds around the world that don't even speak Arabic?
I don't know if that's the miracle part itself. I mean, if you go, for example, to North Korea, you'll see that a lot of them memorize, the morning chants or whatever, and it is the way it is, right? If North Korea was bigger, there'd be if North Korea was bigger, there'd be more people. But what I'm trying to ask here, like, so it is linguistically miraculous, is what you're saying. Do you understand it in Arabic? Have you?
Yeah, I speak Arabic, alhamdulillah. But my question to you, my friend, is before we jump off this topic quickly, the North Korea example you gave, they don't memorize a 600-page long charter which they chant every morning, and they know all the vowels and
like. What's the length where you draw the line where you think that is miraculous? Like, how big does it need to be?
I mean, there is no set length. It's like 250 pages or 300 or 600 or 700, whatever that. But it has to be something reasonable, right? I would say if you want to match the Quranic criteria and the challenges that it gives you, when it says فَأْتُوا بِكِتَابٍ فِي سُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقُونَ, right? I would say, bring something similar to it. 500 pages, 600 pages. If you want to go more than 600, go for it, right?
But what's the criteria for similarity? Because some people have written verses and they're dismissed and they're killed for it and so on because
I've seen that. By the way, I don't believe we should kill them because the Quran gives you this challenge. So if you're killing them, that's counterproductive, right? But I mean, I've seen a lot of them. Surah Faqah, you've probably seen it. You're familiar with Abdullah Samir.
Right, that's more like a joke these days. But there are there's poetry from back in the day, close to the time when the Quran was written down. So what is the criteria to dismiss those? Like, how do you determine similar to it?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So first of all, if you look at the historically speaking about these poets, none of them managed to produce a chapter like it in which they said, I have produced a chapter like it. Most of them didn't even try. Just after hearing the Quran, they didn't even want to give it a try, right? And if you can bring me an example of somebody, and we'll do it. We memorize thousands of songs. It's easy to memorize, to sing. Okay, well, bring me a song that's as long as the Quran and memorize it, and make people who don't speak the language memorize it.
So I'm trying to understand, how do you link that to it being divine? So you're saying the fact that a lot of people did memorize it, that makes it miraculous?
Well, no, that's one of the many reasons. No, well, there's not one reason to why Islam is the truth. There's many reasons, and you can't take one reason and say that reason alone suffices.
So
you get what I mean?
What I'm trying to understand is, for you, like in your journey, you were born in a Muslim family, and then what is the point that you really, really believed? Like, you came across the Quran, you memorized it, and you thought, I need to believe, or it has to be the truth because so many people memorized it. Is that what you're saying?
That's one of the reasons. I'm not saying that's the only reason, right? Things add up. You get what I mean? You can't put one reason and say that's the only reason. It would be illogical.
Why would there be so many partial reasons?
It's not partial reasons, many full reasons, right? Embryobiology, prophecies,
So is that reason full
science.
on its own? Like if that's if
Well,
that
actually, you
reason
know,
is
no, you know, I'll accept you on that. It's not full reasons. You can't take one reason and say this is what Islam's the truth. You have to take multiple things and put it as a picture, because the Quran
wouldn't
was
it
not
be
revealed as
better
one
if
fact.
like there was one
Mhm.
reason that cannot be disputed at all?
I mean, the memorizing the Quran, it can't be disputed. This in it itself is a miracle. No one
Are
can
you
really
saying
dispute
yeah?
that.
Are you saying that's a full reason to believe that Islam is from Allah? That one.
Yeah, I would
One.
say so. I would say
But you
that's one
just
of the
said
reasons.
there's no full reasons. Is it a
No,
full
I
reason?
did retract that though. I agree
Okay.
with you. I thought about it, and I guess I was looking at it from a different lens. But yes, this is one full reason. It can't be refuted, this reason, unless you can bring me something that's that length that millions of people who don't know that language have memorized it.
Right. So what you did, or what Islam did, is set up an arbitrary challenge of bring me a book similar to this that is this much of length and this many people memorized it. But at the
Well,
end of it, that even if that did happen, it doesn't
mhm.
prove anything godly about it.
Okay,
Like, can
two
you
things.
logically tell me what is godly about it aside from, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you think because it's so unlikely for something like that to happen, is that what makes it godly?
So two things. First of all, the length and memorization is not the only miracle of it. There's many. When it comes to the linguistic miracle that we're talking about, there's a lot to the linguistic miracle, right? And I'll give it to you, right? For example, the melody with it, right? You listen to Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah 35, Mashari bin Rashid al-Afasi. I mean, if anyone wants to Google that, just listen to it and tell me that a 7th century man was able to come up with this, right? And it was on spot. It's not like he
Right.
sat with his friends and they were
So
thinking.
because it sounds
Revel-
good, I mean, there were poets who wrote this. There are stories. I mean, there are songs that sound a lot nicer as well. Are you saying
Sure.
because it sounds good? Because that's subjective.
No, of course it's subjective, but I mean, we can listen to the Quran and you say it doesn't sound good. I would highly doubt anyone really argues with that. But that's not the main point. What I'm trying to get to is, if you look at all the linguistic miracles, all the way that it was constructed over
Wait, I
23.
want to slow you down because you're moving from one point to another. You just said this is a linguistic miracle, is how it sounds.
That's one of them, of course.
So, what is miraculous about the Quran sounding good to some people?
Well, first of all, if you listen to the Quran, you can play a recitation right now. I can put it in the chat.
No, I'm asking you in theory, what makes that miraculous? Not whether it's nice to listen to or not. If it's nice to listen to, what makes that a miracle or proof?
Because the beauty of the Quran over 700 years touched the hearts of millions of people,
But
billions
you just
of people.
agreed that beauty is subjective, right?
Of course, it's subjective, my friend. Of course, I have no issue with
how is that objective proof if it needs to sound nice to you?
The linguistic miracle in and of itself is subjective. Somebody can say, you know what, the Arabic language as a whole, I don't like it, right? So that's what I'm telling you.
So if it is subjective, is it adequate proof? Because proof has to be objective. It has nothing to do with your opinion of how something sounds.
No. Well, that's the thing. If you're gonna, this is why, I mean, in science, you could argue, if you use philosophy of science, that there's nothing objective, right? You could argue that.
No, I'm not sure why you're bringing something else to it. I'm just talking about one thing. Are you saying proof is not objective? The Islamic proof is not objective?
Well, for me, of course, it's objective. But I'm saying to you from your perspective, right? Because I'm speaking to an atheist, right?
What you're saying for you it's objective, but for someone else it's subjective?
Well, and that's the exact what I'm trying to get to right now. If you
That's
study
not how subjectivity works.
No,
I'm sorry I'm
I get you.
interrupting, but it's because you're jumping from one point to the next.
I'll just explain myself quickly, right?
Yeah.
If you study the philosophy of science, you could argue that there's nothing objective whatsoever, right? I mean, if we go ask a nihilist, right? Some people tell you 2 + 2 = 4 is not objective. Some people argue that, right? So to me, I would claim that it's objective. Somebody else would claim it's subjective. But that doesn't change the fact that it's objective.
I'm not trying to tell you what other people think. So you're saying it is objective, but beauty and like the sound, the melody, finding it nice is subjective.
I'm telling you right now, that's objective. The sound of the Quran, objective.
The fact that it sounds good is objective, is what you're saying.
I'll tell you that right now, 100%.
So what if someone says, I don't find it good?
No genuine person would say that.
So you're saying no genuine person, basically, like the point that you're getting at is no genuine, honest person would disbelieve in Islam, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Well, if they have knowledge about it, of course.
That's nonsensical because you're basing it, like I'm trying to get you to tell me what made you believe, and you tell me there's so many linguistic miracles, and one of them being that it sounds so good. But then you're telling me that sounding so good is objective. But what does sounding good mean in terms of... So, okay, let me put it this way. If the Quran, everybody in the universe like had to agree, like everyone actually, if you ask anybody on the street, they'll tell you it does sound beautiful, and not one person said no, that would be kind of miraculous. But you'd get more people agreeing with a song sounding good than the Quran sounding good. So How is that objective or a
Cut out there for
miracle?
a sec. Could you repeat that?
So,
The last
so
part. Just the
what is
last part.
miraculous about the Quran sounding good to some people who are Muslim or otherwise?
Even non-Muslims, but yeah.
Yeah, what is miraculous about it sounding good?
Well, that's what I was trying to get to, right? The Quran itself was revealed over, alhamdulillah, yeah. The Quran was
Yeah.
revealed over 23 years, right? And it was not revealed in a way that the Prophet, he was studying beforehand. It was on-spot revelation. Somebody
No,
would ask him,
I don't want to get to that point yet. I'm asking you, how is it miraculous
no,
that
because
it
that
sounds good?
that ties in with it, right? This is tied in with that.
Okay, how
I
does
mean, a
it? Go
song,
ahead.
pardon me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Right? So somebody asks him a question and he gives a response on spot like that, no preparing, nothing. There's no
Wait, doesn't he have to wait for the revelation from Jibril?
so the revelation does come from Allah and through Jibril, yes, but sometimes it's instantaneous, right?
So sometimes he gets it without Jibril being there?
No, who said Jibril? Jibril, just because other people can't see Jibril doesn't mean. And by the way, not every single verse came from Jibril, just so you know. We don't
No,
believe the
I'm
whole
trying to understand. So you're saying sometimes instantaneously he would have the verse, like he would say the verse, because Jibril, like he received it that moment without Jibril being there, or he is muted for a second. I didn't mute him, by the way. Muslim dude, you're muted. You want to unmute yourself?
Pardon me. I muted back.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, okay, that point aside, so what you're trying to get at is because he received them at so many different points, but they sound good together, you're saying that's miraculous.
Yeah, that's one of the miracles.
Did you know that often when these verses do sound disjointed because there's many stories one after another in the same surah because they were revealed at different times and they don't mesh together all the time?
Can you give me an example? I mean, we can go Surah Ma'idah gives you a story of Jesus, gives you multiple other stories. We can go give me an example and we'll check it out.
I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but
well, I need something to work with.
No, like you know more than I do that there's a lot of times that the Quran switches from one story to the next,
of
right?
Course,
and the thing is, the people collected these surahs after the prophets. That you're saying that it is miraculous that he would come up with a verse every now and then, and that they would all sound good in cohesion, if that were true, right?
The whole Quran, even as it is compiled right now, you open it from cover to cover, you read it, it all sounds in cohesion. Even though there's it goes from the story of Jesus, the story of Moses, and then it goes to a lot of abrogation, so on and so on. Of course.
Okay. You asked me for an example. Let me think. There was a verse in my mind. What was the surah? You help me out. There was a surah where it said, it's a small surah. Sorry, 1 second. It's escaping my mind right now, but it's a surah about
what's inside.
أولئك Surah Al-Ma'un. Surah
Al-Ma'un. That's very short. So
yeah. Surah Al-Ma'un. You see how it goes from one verse to the next? Like, help me with the first verse of that. How did that begin?
سورة المعون أرأيت الذي يكذبون
أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين
فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين.
Okay, so that surah is an example of how disjointed it is. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين. Have you seen the person who disbelieves, right? Me right here. فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم. That is the person who mistreats the orphan. What does verse A have to do with one have to do with verse 2?
So you're saying, well, I mean,
what
kind
does,
of obvious, this one.
Like, what does being a disbeliever have to do with mistreating orphans?
Well, this is a general statement saying that, so this ayah is speaking about the disbelievers, specifically the ones who are evil to the orphans.
What you said, it's a general statement.
No, I meant to say specific. I was just about time. So that's specific.
No, but in the Arabic language, it says, أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين. Have you seen that person? فذلك, so that is the one who is bad to the...
Yeah, it's speaking about those specific ones. I mean, I'll give you an example. The Quran says, لا تهدي من تحب. This is
no, wait. You can't move on to the next one.
No, I'm not moving on. I'm same topic, I promise you. Right?
Okay.
It says, لا تهدي من تحب, speaking of the uncle of the Prophet, who was a disbeliever, but who took care of the Prophet as an orphan, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly not speaking about all the disbelievers. You get what I mean?
Okay, but in this case, the language
this
says...
is your No, I'm telling you, from the Arabic language, this is a specific. It's not general.
Right. The Arabic language here, it says, فَذَلِكَ, so that is the one, not and the one, like one who is a disbeliever and is bad to orphans. Because what does being a disbeliever have to do with being bad with orphans.
So when it says أرأيت الذي كذب بالدين, it's not speaking about every single kafir, and then it specifies, right? Because when it says فأرأيت الذي كذب بالدين, if you stop there and leave it at that, then it's speaking about all of them. You read the next ayah, it says the one that is evil to the orphan.
Right. But you're incorrect, because it doesn't say and is evil to orphans. It says that is the one who is evil to orphans.
فذلك
saying-
الذي يدعو اليتيم. Yeah,
It's saying, have you
my
seen the
friend,
disbeliever?
the
That
Quran-
is the one.
Listen, I'm telling you, the Quran speaks about disbelievers, kuffar, that are going to
Okay.
end up in hell, like the Prophet said,
All
that
right,
cared
all right.
about orphans.
So, okay, that doesn't make sense to me, that the language would say, like, God is wording it very weird. But anyway,
with
the
all due
next few
respect,
verses.
that would be an issue with your understanding of the Arabic language.
Right, okay. So the next few verses, فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين, and doesn't feed the needy. فويل للمصلين. So woe be to the
And then
people
you read the
who
next
pray.
ayah, of course. Yeah.
Right. So what does the previous part have to do with the next part?
No, because this surah as a whole is speaking about a certain group of people who disobeyed Allah, Muslim and non-Muslim alike.
But it's not speaking, God is not saying specifically those people. It's saying, have you seen, okay, let's go through the verses. Have you
Okay.
seen the disbeliever? That is the one who is bad to orphans and doesn't feed the needy. So woe be to the people who pray, الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون, who are kind of not paying attention.
Or lazy, or yeah.
Yeah, الذين هم يراؤون, those who show off, ويمنعون الماعون, and they don't give to their neighbors when they need them, or like think of
Ma'un
the
means
word.
small toy or gift.
I thought it was like utensils and stuff, not sharing, not
It's
borrowing.
not giving something small, like something.
Right.
Yeah.
What does any of these verses have to do with each other? Like,
Okay,
are you
so
saying there's
So the
specific
Quran,
people?
surah, I mean, you have to understand the surah contextually. This surah, it's quite clear. It's speaking about sins that
Not
people
quite
can
clear.
do. The one who abuses the orphan, the one who doesn't share, the one who doesn't pray properly, right? So it's
What does any of that have to do with disbelief, though? The first verse, what does any of it have to do with disbelief?
No. So the final ayah, or the one about the musallun, is not directly related to the one the kafir, but in the Quran.
Right, but why is it right after it? Why is God so like suddenly first talking about the kafir who is bad to orphans and the needy and the people who pray? Like, that was a weird transition. So you're telling me that is the best way to write a surah? That is the best book
Of course.
ever?
I mean, with all due respect, I've read the surah hundreds of times in my life. You know,
I'm
it's
sure.
in very, it's in Juz Ammam. I mean, you've probably read it
Yeah,
many
it's one
times
of the
in your
first
Muslim.
surahs that I memorized, yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, what chapter is Surah Ma'un? I think it's like, I'm not sure, maybe 110, something like that. It's like the fourth, fifth surah. But the point is, this surah, no one's in history, I don't think, has ever seen an issue with this except for you, with all due respect, right?
No, because you're telling me the book is perfect, right? And that is not true, that no one in history has seen an issue with it. But you're telling me the
With
book
this
is
specific
perfect.
surah, I don't think anyone has really had an issue saying that this surah,
That still doesn't make it true. Like, that still doesn't make it good because no one else had objected before. I'm asking very clearly. You said it was a very coherent book that is very beautiful, and anyone who disagrees is because they're dishonest and a bad person. So I'm asking you, why would God bring up disbelievers and then talk about something completely unrelated? Like, whether you're good to orphans or the needy has nothing to do with disbelief. I mean, in Islam, you can't even adopt because Muhammad married his adopted son's wife and canceled adoption.
You can't give a child your last name. That's what it is. And
yeah,
that's,
but you're not adopting. Like, are they mahram?
No, come on, my friend. The
Can they
Quran
be
says,
with your like daughter in the same room if it's a
I mean,
man?
this Quran, so this surah you're speaking, subhanAllah, is speaking about the one who's evil to the orphan, right? In the Quran.
But what does that have to do with disbelief is what I'm asking you.
No, I'm just bringing up the adoption thing, because you can't say you're not allowed to adopt and leave it at that. I mean, you have to give the context.
No, but before that, what does, like, the main question, what does disbelieving have to do with being bad to orphans? Because I'm seeing more charities in the non-Muslim world than the Muslim world.
I mean, okay, let's go back 200, 300, 400 years. There was more charities in the
but we're
Muslim.
talking about now. And, like, are you saying back then there was a correlation?
That's falsely present. I'm sorry, man, but that's falsely presentism. I mean, that's a very stupid argument, with all due respect.
Okay. Well, we started the insults. Look, Habibi, I'm trying to tell you.
Wallahi, with all due respect, that was a very, very bad argument.
Right. Everything you're saying, with all due respect, everything you're saying is incoherent as hell. But I'm trying to understand this one point from you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Okay, if God was specifically talking about a specific group of people who were disbelievers and bad to the orphans and this and that, and then started talking about another topic completely, isn't there a better way to write it down?
No, so
Like,
it's
are
the
you
same
telling me
topic.
this is
The
the
topic,
most?
topic of Surah Al-Ma'un is the people who are stingy and evil. That's the topic of the surah, right?
Yeah, but
And
why
then it
bring
speaks about,
disbelievers into it?
I'll
You're
tell you why.
slandering us.
I'll tell you why. Speaking about disbelievers who are stingy and Muslims who are stingy. That's what the surah is talking
No,
about.
it doesn't say like. Okay,
No, no, it
what
says
does?
no, it says فذلك فويل بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون. Yeah,
الذين هم يراؤون ويمنعون الماعون. That's speak about the Muslims. And then
but they're not bad to
they're
orphans
stingy.
or needy, right?
No, but the last ayah is speaking about the Muslims who are stingy, correct?
No, it's
إنهم
talking about
يراؤون
the
ويمنعون الماعون.
Okay,
Correct?
but what does that have to do with the beginning? What does that have to do with
Exactly.
being bad to the
Speaking about
orphans?
evil people, Muslim and non-Muslims alike.
It's weird because the wording makes it seem as like فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدْعُو الْيَتِيمَ, and that is the one. So that is the one.
Yes.
So what is the
it
inference here?
No, so it's speaking about stingy and evil people. This is what the theme of the surah
Look,
is.
the point that I'm trying to get at is it is very badly worded to the point that God is talking about two different topics, right? Like he starts with disbelievers and then the believers in the middle, and wording it in a way that it's inferring, okay, they're bad to the orphans. What does the belief have to do with it at all? He could just say no believers, no disbelievers. He could just say be good to orphans, be generous, all that stuff, without bringing believers and disbelievers. That's a way better way of wording it. So how can you tell me that it's perfect?
No, that's your opinion, and I have to disagree.
Exactly,
with you on
it's subjective. You can't say anyway. Anyway, I got a little sidetracked here. Like I'm not gonna.
Let's go back to the original question. All right.
Right.
So why?
Yeah, the original question is that the proof? Like that is why you believe Islam is the truth, and anyone who doesn't agree is a bad person?
I mean, that's one of the reasons, right? But let's go to something you want objective that you and I would both agree on, correct?
Sure.
The Quran, embryology, for example. That
is incorrect in the Quran. It is borrowed from the Greeks, and it is incorrect.
No, so if you look at the Greeks had spoke about the period having to do with the birth of the baby, which is scientifically incorrect.
Right, but that part, the steps were specific, like were exactly copied from the Greeks.
No,
those steps.
So let's pretend, for the sake of argument, that we copied the Greeks. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they brought to him what the Greeks said. He said, take out this and keep in what's right and leave out what's wrong.
But it's not right still.
Well, where's the mistake?
Wait, it's still not right. Like the bones are not covered in meat. That's not how the steps work.
No. So if you look, I know what you're speaking about, right? So if you look at the Arabic grammar of this ayah, the covering of the meat, it's speaking about before and after and during. So it's speaking about it is.
No, it says فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا.
Yeah. So if you look at this ayah,
the point is, what I'm trying to get at is here. I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to demonstrate that it is not objectively true at all. Like, and you're saying Muhammad took out the bad parts, right? Like he took it from. You're saying let's presume Muhammad took it from the Greeks and left out the bad parts.
Yeah, right? I'm saying let's presume he took it, and he took out the period, for example, having to do with the birth of the baby, which is scientifically incoherent, right?
Okay, so the original claim was that how could he have known any of that stuff? And now you're entertaining the idea that he took it from someone else, but he took out the bad parts.
No. Well, I mean, first of all, their stuff wasn't translated into Arabic, right? So it's not even something logical to think. But I'm saying, for example,
How did people trade back then? There were trade routes. How did people trade?
Those works of I forgot their names, but the Greek men that wrote those stuff, their works were not translated into Arabic. But let us pretend.
No. Are you saying nobody who's Greek has spoken to an Arab person, like word of mouth?
But let's say somehow, I'll agree with you for the sake of argument. Somehow, some Greek guy, he got it from Galilee. He came to the Arabs. He told it to the Arabs, and then it came to the Prophet ﷺ, and it was said to him. And then he said, "Okay, I heard what you said. The period thing, this is scientifically incoherent. We're going to take it out, right? Or we're going to keep it in." Yes, that's what I was saying earlier. If you look at the ayah, it speaks about before. And by the way, it's not only my opinion. If you read Tafsir Ibn Kathir himself says this. He says, if you look at the chronological steps, he's saying that this happens.
You have to look into that. But
before and after.
Continue your presumption, right? You were saying.
So it happens before and after, right? So your mistake that you found in is not actually a mistake.
No, okay. So you're saying, let's presume that a Greek person took it from Galen, and then an Arab person heard it and said it to the Prophet, and then what?
And then the mistakes that Galen had about the periods, for example, he had other mistakes, by the way, but the period's the main one. Mm-hmm. The Prophet ﷺ, he knew to take those out and then keep in what's scientifically coherent and put that
in. Is the miracle that how could the Prophet have known any of this at all at the time? Because that's what I kept hearing till we heard about the Greeks.
No. Well, when we heard about the Greeks made mistakes. So if anything, you're proving the prophet's miracle even more, because it came to
No,
him. According to you,
look,
it
what
came
I'm
to
trying
him
to get
and
at
he
here
corrected
is what I'm trying to get at
that's
is
equal to him bringing it out of nothing.
the goalposts keep shifting. So at first, the miracle was how could anyone primitive from the 7th century know anything about embryology at
No. I
all?
said, how would he know how? I said, how did he know what embryology was?
Right, and
How
that's
did
the first claim that the apologists always come with, or dawah people. They say, how could he have known anything? And then we show that
I
the
didn't use the
Greek
word
have known
anything,
this
but
much.
we can continue. Yeah.
Yeah, so we show that the Greek have known this much already and written it down, and then we say, well, he refined it. So how much are we going to keep shifting the goalposts?
I didn't
here?
shift the goalpost. What I've told you is this mistake that first.
Maybe not you, but like dawah people in general.
Okay, well then you're gonna have to go
claim.
take that up with Ali Dawah, whoever you're talking about, right? Not me. But
and what about the sperm verse?
if you look, do you think sperm is created in the testicles? Come on, man. But let's get to that.
How does it come from behind the backbone and the ribs? Where is it
if you
created?
if you look at where the sperm is created, but we'll get to that in a second, right? Let's finish the embryology and then we'll move, right? The Galen, he made a mistake. You're saying it came up with the Prophet. It came to him, and he knew what was right and what was wrong. So even if I'm giving you that, can you explain to me how he knew what was right and what was wrong?
Well, we're not going to get into embryology because I don't want to make this whole talk about how he was wrong. I'm trying to follow through. Like, is that a miracle to begin with? If the Greeks had it before, are you saying they were partially correct and he refined it?
No.
So if they were correct all the way, would that have been a miracle?
If they were correct all the way, of course, that's something to ponder about.
Really?
But they weren't. But no, but that's a hypothetical that didn't happen.
No, because like I'm coming up with a video soon to show you a lot of knowledge that primitive people had from way before the Prophet. Are you going to attest that any of them are miracles?
Well, I have to see exactly. It's everything's case by case thing.
Is there anything that I could tell you that they knew this back in the day, and you would say, "Oh, that must be a miracle from God"?
It depends. Honestly, it's a case. But if you know what,
are you saying that
if somebody knew, if somebody in 14 BCE explained embryology step by step without any mistakes, that is a miracle. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, without any mistakes.
Okay, because I have a lot of impressive miracles in the next video, like one of the next videos that I'm going to talk about. I can't wait to see, because if like when do you draw the line that people back then were too primitive to know something? Like, how do you assess that?
It's a case by case thing.
But you're saying there is a chance that there is a chance that you could come across information that people back then knew, and you would say, "Oh, that must be a miracle from God."
But that's the thing. First of all, there's a key. There's a bit of consistency to it, but I need the proof. Show me who in 14 BCE gave.
I'm asking you, is that a possibility at all? Like, is the criteria that it's something they couldn't have known back then with the technology that they had? That is the miraculous part.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah. But that's not the only
part. So
there
is a chance you would come across that. There is a chance, like subjective, case specific, but there is a chance you would admit this miracle. This is a miracle, and it is not from Allah. It's from somebody else.
If you can bring me the evidence, yeah, we can do that.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to watch the video coming up, because
there's no
way more impressive things.
My friend, there's no one in history. There's no one in history that believes that has done that.
There's no one in history. Wait, so you know all about history? Oh, where did he go? Anyway, this was getting a little frustrating, to be honest, but I think I had this caller in one of my chats before. You can tell from the way that they're talking, they're like, I got sucked into this weird debate when I wasn't planning on it. I'm trying to ask him, what do you believe? And how did you get to that conclusion? And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but in this case, I can very clearly tell you he believes in Islam because he was born in Islam. And then he was indoctrinated into Islam, and he learned so many things that it's obviously self-evidently the truth, bro. And he and many other Muslims have this idea that if you're presented with the same proof that he was presented and you don't believe, it's because you're choosing to disbelieve and you're morally a bad person and this and that. And anytime they want to point to evidence, they're pointing to things they learned after already being a believer. Things like embryology in Islam. And then you show them it doesn't mean that. And they're like, well, the Prophet might have, like, let's presume the Prophet refined it. Like, before apologists and Dawah people knew that the Greek had the same sequence already written down, they're putting the miracle as if, how could the Prophet have known that at all? But when we demonstrate that other people have known that, well, the miracle is that he cleaned it up. Like, you see where I'm coming from? What does constitute a miracle? So when it comes to claims of scientific miracles, which is an oxymoron, scientific cannot be a miracle. If it is explained, it is not a miracle. A miracle is basically something that we don't know how it happened. And even that is not divine in any way. Like, there is a stronger case for a miracle proving God if you're impressionable and someone came to you and said, I can levitate, and that proves that specifically Allah number 5, I don't know, I'm making up a new Allah, is God, and they levitated. Does that mean that Allah number 5 is God? No. Could mean that they've achieved some kind of technological advancement that we don't know about. It could be aliens. It could be, there's a million different explanations. Even if it was God, it is a poor way to prove that it is you, because it's a non sequitur. Like, look, I did something that nobody else has been able to do, and you don't know how, which means it is God. Miracles do never prove God. But even then, I like to listen. What is that scientific miracle? Is it a scientific miracle because they were too primitive to have known about it? Okay, well, you guys are not going to want to miss out on my next, well, not next video, but next video about, screw it, I'm going to ruin it. A bunch of things that Muslims should consider miracles if they're following the same criteria of miracles in Islam. All of them are older or maybe around the same time as Prophet Muhammad or before him. And they will demonstrate that, oh my God, so many of those civilizations were way ahead of their time. They're way ahead of Muhammad when he existed. How could they have known that the stars moved that way? How could they have known? Like, there was a battery made in Baghdad, I believe. People are not sure how many of them were made, what it was used for, but a battery was invented back then. Is that a miracle? It is impressive, and it's worth looking into, and it's worth learning how did they come to achieve that knowledge. But it is not a miracle by any means. So in my next video, I'm going to demonstrate a bunch of miracles that I don't know how a Muslim can look at it and using the same assessment, like criteria to assess what a miracle is in Islam, would say, yeah, this is not a miracle though. So please stay tuned for that. You know, drop a like on this here, where there's 127 of you. If everybody liked here, the like count would go a lot up. Don't make me beg, okay? The algorithm likes this stuff, so please drop a like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you get my stuff, because I'm not good at scheduling. So if you want to listen to me talk, you got to turn on notifications. Yeah, so that's the upcoming topic. And, you know, one more thing. I am more than open to my points being critiqued. At the end of the day, none of this is going to prove or disprove Islam. I do not care, because Islam has never been proven to begin with. But I do like picking at some of this logic. And if someone wants to come out and say, I disagree with, for example, just a quick example before we go, people who claim that it is disrespectful to not only critique Islam, but make jokes about it or whatever, like this is Islamophobic, disrespectful, and so on. I made a point in my last 2 videos. Ibrahim destroyed other people's religious symbols. And so did Prophet Muhammad when he came back into Mecca, I believe. But I was focusing on the story of Ibrahim. So by the same criteria, Muslims should be okay with someone from another like religion smashing a mosque because it's the false religion, right? So I am yet to see a response to that. And I urge you to push people to don't like talk to random Muslims, but if you see a da'wah person touting one of those things, push them to answer these questions, because I don't see, like, I think that is foolproof. I don't see how anyone can tell me that, you know, Islam deserves respect and you shouldn't disrespect Islam when one of the prophets literally smashed the religious symbols of another religion. So I'm coming across so many of those points that are honestly indisputable. So I am looking forward to the moment that someone proves me wrong, at least about, you know, some of these things that I'm very confident about. I'm looking forward to someone saying, you know what? No, what Ibrahim did was wrong, or what he did was right, and here's the context. And I will turn around and be like, you know what? You have a good point. That still hasn't happened. And I doubt it will for a long, long time, if at all. So anyway, thank you for the super chat, PZ. I really appreciate it. As you know, YouTube demonetizes most of my videos, so I don't even get a little bit from advertising, but I do get by, and I appreciate when people, you know, give me super chats as well. But this is not me asking for any by any means. So please just like, subscribe, follow, interact. That is all I ask of you. And don't share my videos if it's unsafe to do so. Anyway, thank you for joining today. Thank you, Rachel. I still see you in the comments. Yeah, I'll try to go to the app if I remember TikTok. But I stay away from these inboxes. They're just too toxic. But thank you, Rachel, for joining. And thank you, everybody else who joined today. Thank you, viewers at home, for watching or listening. I appreciate you coming today. And as always, think critically. Think for yourself. How do you end this?